What is up, everyone, and welcome back to some more Higurashi. In the previous recording session, we had quite a lot revealed to us. It started out, they revealed a bit of Keiichi's past, right? And revealed he was a bit of a violent youngster in his, early high school, middle school days. And then, like, the rest of the gang, aside from Reina, I guess, but the rest of the gang was just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. But I guess that revelation then led to him somehow remembering events of the first chapter. Like, he shouldn't have those memories, but somehow he did. His feelings were strong enough, I guess, in the fact that his friends accepted him regardless of his past. So then it gave him clarity over what happened in chapter 1 somehow. And we saw, like, the truth behind what actually happened, right? Because Keiichi realized he was acting a lot like Reina is now, which made him come to terms with the fact that he was also dealing with his own delusions in chapter 1, which, like I said previously, it kind of retroactively makes chapter 1 like the most depressing chapter, because genuinely his friends were doing nothing but trying to be nice for him, to try to do things for him, to try to, like, calm him down, because they could tell he was going through something rough at that point in time. It was very, very interesting. And then also we kind of got the revelation that, I guess it wasn't really much of a revelation, it was more so like confirmation one way or the other, but it was pretty much hard confirmed at this point. Oishi is definitely not in the pocket of the Sonozakis, like, at all. Because we saw that Oishi had, like, some kind of special meeting with the Sonozakis, right? And then where they essentially say, hey, that informant, essentially, that you've been getting all your information from, yeah, here's where she gets all her information from. And they dump out off Takano scrapbooks, like, yeah, all these, crazy tall tales, this is where all her information comes from. Yeah, are you sure you want to keep chasing this lead? And they essentially publicly humiliate, well, they didn't publicly, but pretty much humiliated Oishi in front of, like, a couple of his fucking close squad mates, right? And then also kind of, they are essentially embarrassing him in front of the rest of, the police department, because now he has to go to the other people that he initiated these raids on the Sonozakis. He has to go back and be like, actually, cancel the raids. That something new information came up. But we're not gonna do the raids. Actually, would be a bad idea. And then it also makes Oishi's actions at the end of chapter 1 make a lot of sense as well, because clearly if Keiichi was deluded, it's something I didn't realize until I had stopped recording. It's something that didn't quite click, but, like, clearly if Keiichi was deluded, then what he taped to the back of his clock in chapter 1 was a marker, because that's what he points out, himself, is that Mion was never coming at him with a syringe. She had a marker in her hand, and she was trying to do something goofy like what they did to Tomitake, right? So clearly, what Keiichi actually taped to the back of his clock was that marker. So of course, Oishi, in his attempt to make himself not look like a fool for believing someone who was clearly suffering from delusions, he removed the marker from behind the clock and tore out the passage in, like, Keiichi's note he left behind about, the mysterious substance that they wanted to inject him with, right? And the special syringe he had taped behind the clock, because clearly if that was left behind as evidence, then they would know that all of it was bullshit. But of course, Oishi, wanting something to be done to the Sonozakis, still left behind the rest of the note that points fingers at the Sonozakis, that cast suspicion on them. It's very interesting. I've really, really enjoyed this episode, or this chapter, because it's done, like, such a phenomenal job of just clarifying and clearing up so many things, but still the main mystery that's been there since chapter 1 is still left unanswered, right? The main mystery of what the hell happened to Tomitake and Takano, right? What happened there? And like there are some other questions that are still kind of up in the air right now, but that main one, despite everything else that's been clarified and cleared up, or there's been some kind of reasonable explanation given to, that main one right there is still like totally left untouched. There's still, if anything, it kind of has made it a bit more mysterious as to what happened there. Because like all the things we thought we could just answer away with it are kind of just like out the window, like not really much of an option anymore. So it's like I'm still left kind of even more stumped than before as to what happened, you know? We're 6 chapters deep and I feel like I know less about what happened at the very beginning of the story. Very, very well done. Honestly, like we'll see how they stick the landing, but I'm sure it's going to be pretty good, but I'm pretty sure chapter 6 has got to be my favorite chapter thus far. I've really fucking enjoyed it. So where we immediately left off is Reina has taken the school hostage. She gave Chie a false call and like essentially led Chie away from the school. And Mion also believed that the phone call was legit. So she tells her bodyguards that are posted outside the school, hey, go follow Chie, go follow that. She's clearly, you know, gonna go straight to Reina. You gotta go follow her. So now none of Mion's bodyguards are at the school either. It's just the kids. Reina steps in, takes them hostage, all except Keiichi, who she's kind of, you know, using as her co-conspirator because she believes Keiichi's still on her side and whatnot. Which I'm very interested in to see how that all fucking comes to a close. And then shortly after that, it cut to, I guess, the Okonomiya police. This is immediately what happened afterwards. So without further ado, let's just jump into it, shall we? Oh. Interesting. Does someone manage to contact the police? Oh. Did Reina?
遅れて申し訳状況は
ご苦労様っす。本日午後1時頃、ひなみ沢営林署内の当時教室にいた生徒25名全員が拘束されている模様。犯人側の第一要求は、営林署敷地内への一切の立ち入りの禁止と、当方へのホットラインの確保です。
Okay, so it's part of her demands to contact the police. Interesting. Right, because she still feels that the police are on her side, right? She doesn't realize that, you know, Oishi and the others involved have now been exposed to the rest of Takano's scrapbooks and have realized how crazy everything is. She believes they're all still on her side right now, yeah?
ってことは初めから警察と交渉する気ってことです。どういうつもりだ。
あと犯人は交渉人に大石さんを指名してます。犯人は竜宮玲奈。
竜宮さんがわかりました。いいですよ。とことんお付き合いさせてもらいましょう。
She gave a crooked smile.
竜宮玲奈以外に犯人カーテンが閉められているので、状況も一切確認できていません。
通報者に選挙時の様子は聞いてませんか。
いえ、竜宮玲奈からの直接の犯行声明でした。よって内部の状況は一切不明。担任は犯行直前に竜宮玲奈の電話呼び出しを受け、遠方に呼び出された間の犯行でした。
計画的ですね。営林署側の人間は人質には。
今日は営林署職員は不在でした。よって生徒25名のみ。生徒数は担任が出席簿で確認した人数です。
それプラス竜宮玲奈以外に犯人らしき人影は。
いえ、何度かカーテンから覗く人影がありましたが、いずれも竜宮玲奈本人でした。ですが規模他を考えて、おそらく最低でももう一人二人はいると予想されます。
単独犯かもしれませんよ。
Reina Ryugyu was a true believer in Mio Takano's scrapbooks. According to those scrapbooks, the entire village was Reina Ryugyu's enemy. She didn't have anyone she can trust. However, she also had believed in Mio Takano's delusion. It was possible that someone who was influenced in the same way was following Reina Ryugyu.
おいさん、校長と担任です。
どうも千恵先生。大丈夫ですか？
She ran up to Chie-sensei, who was crying with a handkerchief held up to her
み
face.
なちゃんはこんなことをするなんて。
マニュアル通りなら最近の竜宮さんの状況についてお聞きす。多分竜宮さんに限っては先生より私の方が詳しいように思います。まあ気を落とされずになんとか穏便に解決しますからご安心を。
Chie-sensei was huddled over, and Oishi didn't think he could say anything else to her. On the contrary, the principal was staying strong, trying to figure out how to take care of the situation.
大石殿、もしできるなら人質の交換をぜひ私と子供たちを交換していただきたい。
校長先生、それは私がやります。私が悪いんで。
先生方には校内の状況についていろいろとお聞きしたいことがありますので、ボンジ君、図面の方で話を聞いてあげてください。
失礼します。1号車の無線に高杉課長です。
はいはい、もしもし。
大石さん、ご苦労さん。状況の大体は熊谷君に聞いたよ。犯人は未成年だそうだね。マスコミ規制の方を厳重に頼むよ。
分かってます。あと犯人側が私を交渉人に指定してきてるようですが、
竜宮玲奈の件は先日の寄生虫の話以来よく知ってる。その流れなら犯人は君のことをまだ味方だと思ってくれ。大石君以外には務まらない。くれぐれも。
本当はすっごく嫌なんですがね。ちょっと今回はいろいろとお騒がせした責任を感じてますので。
大石さん、車載電話に犯人です。
早速ご指名の電話が来ます。早速出ることにします。ありがとう。はい、もしもし、大石です。
大石さんですか？どうも、竜宮です。
どうも、大石です。
車載電話ってたまにちょっと
私と同じでね、定年間近なんですよ、きっと。
Oishi and I exchanged friendly words. A long, long cord trailed through the hallway from the teacher's office. That cord extended further to the phone on the podium in the classroom.
では本題に入りますね。まず最初に、あなたが交渉人たる資格があるか。
お伺いします。
大石さんは私の味方ですよね。
当然じゃ。あなたと私で園崎家の陰謀を暴こうじゃないですか。
Oishi answered without hesitation. Was he still my ally? Or was the sly detective just saying what I wanted to hear? Either way, I only had Oishi to depend on. If I couldn't trust him, I was stuck. There would be nothing else I could do.
圭一君も一時期は私が言っても今は信じるでしょ。
Keiichi-kun was sitting on the floor, facing away from me with his head resting in his hands.
今はもう私の仲間。
ああ、そうだ。
Renaduga asked Keiichi Maibata if he was her comrade, but I couldn't hear his voice. Was she trying to tell me that Keiichi Maibata was still alive? Or that he was being forced to obey her because of the hostages?
前原さんも心強い。でもあなたも一時期前原さんを少し。
モデルガンの事件を聞いて、でも過去の事件で今を見損なっちゃいけない。それらを踏み台にして私たちはより良い理想の自分になれるように。
とてもいいことを言います。まさにその通りです。
だから私たちは許し合ったの。だから圭一君のことを、圭一君は仲間。
わかりました。ならばそれは私にとっても圭一君は仲間ということです。圭一君に私がよろしくと言ってると。
後で言っておきますね。
圭一君にも新しい受話器に出てもらうことはできますか？
The conversation stopped suddenly. That made me nervous. Did I say something wrong?
いいよ、圭一君。大石さんから電話だよ。
I heard some rattling and rustling on the other side of the phone.
もしもし、前原です。
He sounded monotone. Unable to disobey, Keiichi Maibata must have been pretending to follow Reina Ryugu's orders.
どうもどうも。沖宮署の大石です。この度はお世話になり、お互い頑張り。
はい、よろしくお願いします。
竜宮さんは
教室の中を歩いてます。
前原さん、イエスならはい、ノーなら A と相槌を打ってください。あなたは竜宮さんが何を要求しようとしてるか。
ええ。
That answer told me for sure. Keiichi Maibata wasn't Reina Ryugu's accomplice. There's no way Reina wouldn't tell her accomplice what she wanted after playing a hostage situation like this. How would he help someone who wouldn't even tell him what she wanted?
担当直入。あなたは竜宮レ。いえいえ、質問を変えます。あなたは竜宮レナに。
はい。
There you go. The other guys in the car listening in on our conversation raised their fists in victory.
犯人は竜宮レナの一人だけ？
はい。
If she was the only suspect, then we could respond appropriately. I guess nobody else believed in Takano's scrapbooks. If so, my being fooled was even more embarrassing. As I thought about my next question, I heard the phone being taken away from Keiichi. Reina came back on the line.
ね、圭一君は味方でしょ？
ねえ、そう。とても頼もしいですよ。
で、今度は大石さんが前の電話で約束した園崎家関係への一斉捜査はどうですか？秘密の研究施設は発見できましたか？
I had to decide on what to say. Should I tell her we conducted raids or not? Maybe she already knew we didn't. Maybe she was just testing me.
今ですね、県警の防隊と公安部で一斉捜査作戦を準備中なんです。何しろ市内全域を一斉にやりますからね。
遅すぎる！大石さん、私たちは今、獅子骨氏が置かれている緊急的…何をのんびりと…大石さん、本当に私の話を信じてくれている私の味方なんですよね。味方ですよ。答えてください。
もちろんですとも。ですが、警察組織ってやつは簡単に私も最大限努力をしてるんですよ。ただですね、やはり話の規模があまりに大きすぎるもので。
大石さん、私、奴らに富武さんにあの異常な死に方を強いたあれをどこかで盛られたんです。昨日から痒くてしかもう私首をかきむしりすぎていつ錯乱して喉をかき破ってしまうかもわからないというのに大石さんは何をもたもたと。
I knew it. Oishi didn't realize how dire the situation was. He understood there was some kind of conspiracy in Hinamizawa, but he didn't realize how soon their plan was going to be executed. Besides, I was already feeling itchy all over my body and was bound to soon die the same way as Tomitake-san.
申し訳ないです。ただですね、みんな言うんですよ。証拠はないのかと。
証拠があればすぐに動いてくれるんですか？
Mio-san's scrapbooks. Maybe that was what I'd need to convince the police. I was afraid someone would destroy the evidence if I handed them over to Oishi-san, so I kept them with me. But I didn't have much longer to live. I might not even make it until tomorrow morning. That's right. I might be dead before tomorrow. I would die tonight.
わかりました。ミオさんのスクラップ帳を、それでどうか他の警察の…
助かります。そのスクラップ帳をぜひ。
I looked through my backpack, which was lying by my feet. Mio-san's scrapbooks were in there.
これは私たちの切り札です。大石さん、くれぐれも、いや、絶対によろしくお願いします。
わかりました。信頼して、必ずや奴らの陰謀を暴いてみせます。
でも、まあ多分、警察も組織だからそうなんだろうなとは。だから、ちょっと強引なやり方だけど、大石さんは、私に要求されてなんとか、このチャンスを有効に生かしてください。
ありがとうございます。必ずや。では、どうしましょう。私が受け取りに参りましょうか。
I knew she wouldn't let me into the classroom. She was still cautious. I could guess where Reina Ryugi was going to take this thing, so I tried to stay ahead of her. I handed a memo with my instructions on it to a colleague.
さすがに私がこの場を離れるわけにはいかないので。
その方がいいかもしれません。やはりあなたが学校の外へ出れば。
もしやって。
いえ、この騒ぎをもうあなたがこういう手に打って出るとは思わなかったでしょうから、強引な手。
口封、それって。
狙撃です。園崎家のヒットマンは多分あなたがこれ以上騒ぎを大きくする前に。だからあなたは表に出ない方がいい。
Okay, I guess.
窓にも近づかないでください。
Oh, I see what he's trying. He's clearly they're prepping something to do something with the windows. So he's like, yeah, definitely do not go near the windows. Whatever you do, you might want to stay away from those windows. Yeah, those evil Sonozakis.
さっきから何度か顔を出してそこを撃たれてしまいますよ。
ちょっと周りには警察がそんなの未然に防げないんですか？
防げるならですがね、訓練を受けたものなら400メートルくらいはやすやすと狙撃するそうです。ましてやあなたもご存知の通り、園崎家の特攻隊は軍事訓練を受け、奴らは侮らないでください。園崎家の陰謀を暴くには。
わかりました。忠告をありがとうございます。どうせ明日まで持たない命でも。
そうですとも。いいですか。くれぐれも窓から顔を覗かせないでくださいよ。用心してください。
The phone conversation ended. Reina Ryugi was going to let Keiichi Maibara deliver the scrapbooks.
さっき書いたやつ用意できてますね。
OK です。うまく渡せま。
狙撃されるかもしれないと脅でもまあ見てるでしょうね。そこはうまくやります。
I roughly understood what was going on from the phone conversation.
じゃあケイチこれとても大切なスクラップ。園崎家の陰謀と奴らの侵略の証拠を暴く書、大石さんに渡してきてね。渡したらすぐに戻ってくるんだよ。見てるからね。変なことをしたら怒るからね。
Rena took out a couple of old scrapbooks from her backpack and gave them to me. Then she cast a sidelong glance at
み
Mio
ー
and
ちゃんにも後で話すよ。みーちゃんの家がどれほど恐ろしい陰謀をひょっとするともう知ってじゃあケイチくん、校庭の真ん中まででいいよ。余計な立ち話ケイチくんは持っていくだけだから。おしゃべり禁止だからね。おしゃべりしたら千恵先生なら T 定規で叩くけど、私ならなんで叩いちゃおうかな。
分かってるよ。無言で持っていくから。俺はレナの仲間だろ。仲間だったらな。
そうだね。仲間だから裏切らないでね。
Rena's eyes were telling me clearly. They were telling me she didn't trust me. But even in this stage, she also knew she shouldn't distrust her friends. Therefore, although she couldn't trust me, she was pretending to. That was why she didn't tie me up.
じゃあ行ってくる。すぐ戻るよ。
よろしくね。
I walked past my friends who were lying down on the floor and headed to the exit. I saw some of their faces as I passed. Some were fearful. Some were sure that I'd use the opportunity to run. Some were scared that they'd die if I did. Don't worry, guys. I won't let her even touch any of you. If Rena tries to do something, I'll stop her even if I have to risk my own life. Anyway, I did whatever it took to ensure that nobody died. I had to make sure Rena didn't get angry. I just wait for the right moment. Went down to the school entrance and changed my shoes, then locked the door and stepped outside. Felt the fresh air on my skin. Saw the lights from the police cars. Could feel all the policemen looking at me. As soon as I was in the schoolyard, a little voice tried to tempt me. I was free from Rena now. If I ran off to the school grounds, I'd be free. What was I thinking? If I did something like that, Rena would go crazy and who knows what else she'd do. The important thing here wasn't my safety, it was to make sure that Rena didn't kill anyone. I saw a big man coming towards me from the school gate. That was probably Oishi-san.
前原圭一さん、どうもどうも。クラちゃんと呼んでください。
レナから何も喋らずに、だから無言でこれを受け取ってください。
わかりました。それが問題のスクラップ帳ですね。お預かりします。
Tried to hand the scrapbooks to Oishi-san, but he stepped aside a little. Confused as to what he was doing, I changed my position and handed them to me again. Took them that time. At that point, Oishi put something that was under his jacket into my pocket.
大丈夫。校舎はあなたの背中ですから。竜宮さんが窓から。
何なんですかこれ
I
は。
couldn't look into my pocket because I didn't want Rena to suspect anything. Whatever it was pretty heavy for its size.
あなたへの教室へ戻る途中で竜宮さんに見つからないようにこっそり読んでください。では、これ以上は不信がられます。
I just followed his directions. I was worried Rena had begun to suspect something. When I looked at the classroom, the curtains were closed. That didn't mean she wasn't peeking out through a crack. Went back to the entrance and locked the door. Rena checked and found the door unlocked. It would cause more trouble. Rena was in the classroom. There was no way she'd come down this way. She was alone. If she left the classroom, everyone would get up and run. They couldn't run because Rena was there, but they were all waiting for their chance. The entrance, then, was Rena's blind spot. As I changed my shoes, I quickly removed what Oishi-san had put into my pocket. There was a radio with an earpiece. Something else that looked like a short police baton. An earpiece? You think she's not gonna notice that? Also, a fucking whole-ass baton? Like, even a short one, like, goddamn. There was also a folded piece of paper. I opened the piece of paper and saw a note written in small print. Dear my Bada-kun, please hide the bug in your pocket. It picks up even a low voice, so you can use it to get in touch with me. By using the earphone, you can hear me in return. There's also a spray for self-protection. It sprays as far as 1 meter. Make sure you aim for the face. This must be the spray. Guess it's safe to try it here. No. I held down the button and gas sprayed out from the nozzle. Sprayed to Rena's hatchet, this required some caution, but it was small enough to fit inside of my hand. It was reassuring that I could hide it so easily. In other words, it was now possible for me to stop Rena. As I realized all my classmates' face rested on my shoulders, I felt sweat form on my face. The memo continued. The spray is just for self-defensive purposes. Pepper spray only impairs eyesight, and while it makes your enemy powerless due to extreme pain and coughing for at least 30 minutes, it's not powerful enough to render them unconscious. Therefore, please don't forget there is a possibility that your enemy may fight back desperately in panic. This spray is your last resort. Please don't depend on it, but if you need to, make sure to use it. Oishi. Was he telling me to use it or not? It's probably one of those grown-up issues. If the cops entrusted me solely with the fate of the hostages and I failed, they'd be held liable. So while he gave me a weapon, he made me consider its use. I hid the bug and the spray in my pockets and went back to the classroom. Felt a little dizzy, maybe because I was nervous. I was simply following Reina's orders because I had no other choice. That was why I wasn't scared. But things were different from before. I had a weapon. I was in a far better position, but my heart was pounding. Humans are so strange. Shit. What am I going to do? What should I do, Keiichi Maebara? Did I want to fight with Reina? The memo said the spray only reaches as far as 1 meter. 1 meter? That was basically a hand-to-hand battle. That meant I only had one opportunity. I didn't have a second chance. The memo also said I'd need to aim for her face. That wasn't going to be easy. Shit. Besides, Reina was cautious. How could I stand directly in front of her within 1 meter? That's what I'd have to do if I was to have any chance of winning. Reina would do anything to reach her goal. She wouldn't even hesitate to kill. Dude, you're doing so much, like, self-reflection right now, like, I feel like you're wasting a lot of time. Just like how I didn't. Like, you came into the school building a while ago and you're still taking your time getting back to the classroom. School's not that big. Of course, things were already extremely serious. An apology definitely wouldn't be enough, but at least there hadn't been any casualties. The more time passed, the more irritated Reina would get. She might demand something again, she might kill someone that time to show how serious she was. Bad things had already taken place, but a tragedy hadn't occurred yet. It was almost here. It wasn't very far at all. When I closed my eyes, I could easily picture Reina killing one classmate after another. After I killed Reina and Mio, and my room was covered in blood. If she killed 20 people, the classroom would be a pool of it. If that happened, Reina would... She still wouldn't realize she was being delusional. She would rip out her own throat and die. That'd be too big a cross for her to carry. And one day, she would remember and be saddened. She didn't need to go through that. I didn't want Reina to go through what I had to go through. Shit. I felt dizzy. This was a very long hallway. I didn't know the classroom was so far. With each step I took, my determination to fight Reina became stronger. Reina would be shocked to realize I had betrayed her, but if she couldn't wake up from the nightmare on her own, someone else would have to wake her up. And her friends needed to be the ones to do that.
おかえり、ケイチ君。大石さん、
なんだ?
As soon as I stepped into the classroom, I smelled something. Everyone had moved to one corner of the classroom. The smell reminded me of a gas station. Was it gasoline? I saw a red gasoline container by Reina's feet. The cap was open. It was seemingly sturdy and made of metal. It said gasoline on the side, written in felt marker. She must have spread it across the entire classroom. The smell was almost giving me a headache. No, it wasn't just in the classroom. The classmates were soaked in gasoline too. How could she? I see. This is just like a hijacker holding a bomb. If the police were to rush in, she would burn the hostages. I don't know where she got it, but she had a lighter in her left hand.
レナ、これ...
もちろんやらないよ。万が一の時の私だって大好きなみんなのバーベキューなんて。だから冗談で済んでほしいって思ってる。
Reina showed off the lighter. Obviously, she was trying to threaten me. I've heard about people committing suicide by setting themselves on fire. They pour gasoline on themselves and light it ablaze. You might think that if it was extinguished right away, it wouldn't be that bad. But human skin is supposedly very delicate. And they say that even if 30% of a person's skin gets burned, it's enough to be fatal. If it was your entire body, it would result in death for sure. I had been put in a disadvantageous position. My weapon might take Reina's sight, but I couldn't stop her from using the lighter. She'd probably use it the moment she's attacked. I didn't know if she realized it, but the kind of lighter she had would keep burning until the lid was closed. Therefore, all she'd have to do was light it and drop it onto the floor. In other words, my spray can wouldn't make Reina powerless at all. The last resort Oishi-san gave me had already lost all of its power.
大石さんはスクラップ長がそうなればあとは一斉捜査で奴らの陰謀が暴ける。そうなんだろう。
あのスクラップ帳だけでお役所ってのはお尻の重いところだそうだからね。
Reina was thinking that if she didn't see any progress with the scrapbook, she'd pressure the police by letting them know about the gasoline.
とりあえずあとは家宝を待つだけだろ。
そうだね。じゃあさっきそれでね、その寄生虫は長い時間を経ても それでは面白く、それがひなみ沢御三家なの。だから彼らは。
Reina was simply telling everyone what she heard from Takano-san. Started mumbling so I could let Oishi-san know what was going on.
すごい匂い。ガソリンをポリタンク丸々ぶちまけるとすごいもんだ。
I was pretending to mumble to myself, so I could only say it very quietly. Wish I could say it louder, but that was probably impossible. Wasn't sure if Oishi-san could hear me. Thought of an idea to find out whether or not they could hear me.
車のクラクション聞きたいな。
クマちゃん、クラクション一発。
Kamigai honked once quickly.
ガソリンとは参ったっすね。これでさっきからなんとなく感じてた匂いの正体が分かりました。多分この後の要求を押し通すための切り札にするつもりでしょうね。
クマちゃん、普通の若い子がポリタンクって言い方をしたら。
さあ、多分。
小宮山君、営林署の人まだ返してない。ちょっと呼んでもらえます？なるほどね。灯油のポリタンクにも灯油とちゃんと書いてある？
はい、中身を間違えたら大変ですから、すべての燃料容器にはちゃんと明記してあります。
Not too many people know this, but regular portable tanks can't hold gasoline. Gasoline, while common, is extremely flammable. It can be lit even with static electricity. Therefore, gasoline must be kept in special metal containers. Those are called carrying cans.
じゃあ前原さんがガソリンって言ったのは間違いなく蛍光管は何リットルのサイズのがあったんですか
？18リットル用と5リットル用の2種類があったと記憶してます。
5リットル用って多分平たい形をしたやつですよね。
ええ、真っ赤で平たくて。
前原圭一はポリ18リットルの方でしょ。
あるいは見慣れない形だったんで、とりあえず適当な言葉が思いつかず。でもどのみち本当にガソリンだとしたらかなり危険なことになります。
Gasoline burns when lit. What's an even bigger threat than liquid gasoline are the fumes. When gasoline fumes are lit on fire, they explode. Also, gasoline evaporates easily. Even at freezing temperatures, it evaporates. And so, in other words, inside the closed classroom, the fumes would fill the entire space. The classroom would then become a bomb itself.
クマちゃん、危険物第4類。
いえ、気化ガソリンが危険だってことは理解してるんですが。
18リットルと5リットルで最悪の場合どの程度規模が違うか。そうだ、ジジイに聞いてみよう。署に連絡して鑑識のじい様がいるか聞いてみて。
おお、犯人に直接リーチ一発振り込みドカーンってところじゃの。
裏まで乗っちゃって大変。そのドカンってのは実に笑えないですな。ところですいません、危険物の第4種はお持ちで？
おつよんか？いや、ここにいる人間全員足せば講師じゃぞい。どうした？ガソリンでも巻いてる？
まさにそのようです。人質の一人に盗聴器を持たせてるんですが、どうも犯人は教室内にガソリンをまいたようなんです。ただまいた量が18リットル缶か5リットル缶、両方のケースのですね、最悪の教室の広さ。
だいたい50平米ですね。
室内は密閉か？
おそらくさぞやガソリン。
多いし、
やっぱり
教室は粉々に。教室内はまず全員。
そりゃ
アホ、ゴリ。わしの記憶がボケてないなら 1.8 メートルの室内を吹き飛ばすのに4リットルもあれば十分だったはずじゃ。
Policemen listening to their conversation on the side went pale. 8 by 8 meters meant that was 64 square meters. Only 4 liters are needed to blow that up, and at least 5 liters were scattered in a 50 square meter room.
つまり嫌なり。じゃあ聞きたくはないんですが。
そうだのう。大石風に例えると、親のリーチ一発ピンフ単葉赤々ドラドラに振り込む。
親の倍満2万4000、配給減点が2万5000点だから。
そんなところだのう。
そりゃあ振り込みたくないリーチだな。ね。
今のうちに消防署に連絡。事件解決後の処理は。
参ったな。こいつは盗聴情報なんで消防車を呼び寄せたらバレちまうな。なんとか学校から見えないところに。
それがいい。あとそれから
ねえ、さっき人質の一人とその際にガソリン散布は
まずいな。化学火災の事例でガソリンの発火点は300度程度。火
冗談じゃない。なんだってそんな危険な液体が。
知るか。消防法と自動車社会を作った連中に言え。6月だからのそう空気も乾燥しとらんとは思うが、とにかく
大石さん、盗聴器で聞く限り犯人は
ってことは、つまり前原さんがスプレーを使って静止しようとしても、しかも盗聴なんてこった。
おい、ライターはまずい。冗談でもいじらせては。犯人もガソリンの危険性を
Don't even let her
認知しとら
play
ん可
with
能
it.
性がある。
I don't think he has much control over that, but especially knowing that he got all that from a fucking bug. He can't exactly ring her up in the car phone and be like, Rena, don't use that lighter.
よう聞く限り、とても知識があるとは思えんぞ。
Oshi's back was covered with a cold sweat. He never even thought this would turn into such a serious matter. He didn't know how dangerous gasoline was. He didn't know because he'd never heard of cars exploding in car accidents. What? I mean, I guess it was the 80s, but like, I mean, it's definitely not a common thing for sure, but like, no, that definitely happens. He knew it was dangerous, but he didn't know what it was capable of. Gasoline is more dangerous once it evaporates. Therefore, a burning car in an accident and gasoline fumes being ignited are at completely different levels. It's quite simple to understand if you think about how car engines work. Cars vaporize gasoline in the carburetor and let it explode in the engine cylinders. In other words, that little explosion in the engine is what gives cars the power to move. Therefore, if you want more power, an engine needs to be bigger to create a bigger explosion. So if an engine cylinder was the size of a classroom, how much power would it create? Anyone with knowledge of engines would know, but a lot of people don't consider how dangerous evaporated gasoline is, because it's too familiar. 25 hostages and one hostage taker. All 26 people were basically stuck in a huge bomb. Furthermore, the suspect might accidentally set it off. If she were to pretend to light the lighter as a threat, that would be the end. All of the people around Oishi had gone pale. The classroom might explode at any moment. How could they save all the hostages? Especially when the criminal was living in her own delusion and her requests were something so unreal.
先ほど受け取ったスクラップ帳の中に犯人からと思われる文書が見つかりました。
One of the policemen brought over a folded piece of paper. Oishi opened it while the others watched. He saw girlish handwriting on the paper. He could tell this was written before she invaded the school. Dear Oishi-sama, if you're reading this letter, that means I'm at the final stage. I must have seized the school and held the students as hostages. I'm planning to appoint you as a negotiator, so please pretend to be threatened by me and become my contact with the outside. First thing I want to tell you is that my enemy is the Sonozaki family and also the aliens, who are pretending to be the parasites, that control the Sonozaki family.
宇宙人?
I didn't think you'd believe me if I brought up the aliens, so I didn't tell you about them until now. But when you read these scrapbooks, you'll understand. The aliens came to Earth in UFOs in ancient times. They landed in Onagahuchi Swamp. They used this village as their breeding grounds, and through that selective breeding, they widened their domain. They were successful. Now they're trying to invade the Earth.
なんだこりゃ。
All the other policemen frowned at the letter.
いやいや、高野の他のスクラップ帳も読みましたが、個人的にはオッシーが面白かったな。
The Sonozaki family, as well as the village authorities, have been brainwashed by the aliens. The villagers' attempts to revive the cult of Yashiro-sama were actually part of the alien strategy to invade the Earth. The aliens are very clever. They don't let people realize they're being controlled. The 88 Clinic must be their secret research center. Please conduct an investigation and expose their secret. Also, please check out the bottom of the swamp. The UFO must still be there. Also, capture all of the relatives of the three families and take x-rays of their brains. You'll find hideous parasites inside of them. But please be careful. The aliens eliminate whoever finds out about them by replacing their host with a lookalike. That's how they've been controlling the village. Therefore, there may already be some aliens among the villagers. It is possible that they will try to interfere with your investigation. As a matter of fact, there have been lookalikes of Mio Takano, Rika Furude, and me, Reina Ryugu. If you see any of those three, capture them immediately. That'll be the proof of aliens existing among us.
高野、どうしてでしょうね。
ああ、俺さ、彼女との電話で岐阜県警さんの検視で。
ああ、検視結果のミスの話ですか。
Of course, it was just a fucking mistake on the autopsy result.
それで私、祭りの日には死んでたはずなのにどうしていたのかななんて、それをこういう風に解釈するとはな。
Of course, it was just some fucking clerical error. I mean, that still doesn't explain away how she ended up in a fucking barrel on fire, but you know, glad to see that's cleared up. Yeah, maybe so, bud.
自分の名前が含まれてるのも鏡に映ったのでも見間違えたとか。
One of the policemen spoke up. He was one of the pair who searched the garbage dump that night.
これは俺。ほら、竜宮レナを探し回った晩、ゴグナで目撃されたって話があったでしょ。あれだよ。あれは多分、村人の誰かが。で、それを本人がどこかで聞いて、自分。
くそって、ノストラダムスだ。あれの大予言と同じ。何が起こっても、予言に含まれるように解釈しまう。今の竜宮レナは、箸が転んだって宇宙人の仕業だって言い出すぞ。
あるいはいずれ捕まることを予見して精神鑑定で有利になる資料を先に。
そんなことあの子は本気で信じてる。いや本気の本気でコロッと生かされた彼女は本気で信じてるんだ。
あ、まだ。何
P.S. I was poisoned yesterday with the same stuff that killed Tomitake-san. I've been scratching my throat since then. I'll probably have clawed my throat out open by tomorrow. If you can find the antidote when you investigate the area clinic, please bring it to me.
これは
ですね。本気で宇宙人の話を真に受けてるなら解毒剤だと言えばうまく騙せるかも。
Oh. But you may not find the antidote, or maybe it'll be too late by the time you do. Therefore, considering the time I have left, I will set 7 p.m. tonight as the deadline. If an investigation doesn't take place and the antidote doesn't arrive by 7 p.m., I will choose to die with all the hostages by lighting the gasoline instead. Okay. Strict deadline, huh?
19今何時だ。
Was it like 6:45?
18時前です。
Okay. It's like 5:45. You have 1 hour. Days are long nowadays. Doesn't get dark even in the evenings. It'll probably start to get dark around 7 p.m.
あと1時間か。いや、1時間を待たずに火遊びで大爆発するかも。くそ、どうすりゃいい。
何が地球侵略と、それに人質を巻き込むなんて
今の彼女にはまともな交渉なんか。しかも本人は冷静だ。
おいさ
ん？何？
I'm planning to spread gasoline throughout the classroom. I'm sure you realize how dangerous that is. If anyone suggests storming into the room, please tell them exactly how bad an idea that would be. Also, the hostages are anchored down with U-shaped bike locks. Even if those alien policemen rushed in and killed me, they'd have to cut each lock. But if you tried cutting them, you might create sparks. Therefore, you need to completely ventilate the room first. In other words, it'll take an extremely long time to rescue all the hostages from the classroom. Actually, I have a different explosive system set up other than the gasoline I spread. It's a very simple time bomb using gasoline and a kitchen timer. The kitchen timer provides electricity as a set time. I rip the tip off its plug so it'll create enough sparks to ignite the gasoline. I've already set the timer to 7 p.m. Even if I'm not around, there will be an explosion at that time. If the classroom isn't ventilated by that time, it'll explode too. Sorry to ask you like this, Aishi-san, but please help me so we can avoid a tragedy. Please let the 3 families know that Mion Sonozaki, the successor to the head of the Sonozaki family, and Rika Furude, a mascot for the cult of Yashiro-sama, are in this classroom. If anyone from the 3 families helps you, I'm sure their conspiracy will be exposed by tonight. The alien invasion is going to happen very soon. Please get going quickly. To my ally, Aishi-san. Reina Ryugu. Yeah, no, your best bet at this point would be to fake an antidote. But then again, that's the thing, it can't just be poison that immediately kills her, though. Because you need her to disarm the timer. Oh, isn't that lovely? I just threw the scrapbooks to the ground.
何が味方だ。
キッチンタイマーって目覚まし時計みたいなもんですか。
ああ、昔の炊飯器とかにはタイマーがついてないもの。それでね、コンセント穴のついたキッチンタイマーって名前の目覚まし時計がありましてね。そのコンセントに炊飯器を挿しておけば、仕掛けた時刻に自動的に電源が供給されて、指定時刻に炊飯器が電源オンに。
へえ。
確かにそれを流用すれば、次元キッチンタイマーってあたりが女の子っぽくてなんだか複雑だな。
A kitchen timer. What a womanly idea.
電力会社に頼んで電力コード式なら電力がなければでもダメか。教室が真っ暗になるのと同時にライターをつけるに決まってますよね。
やっぱり 解毒剤の線をついて指向性ですよ。多分自身に使う前に人質に試すはずです。注意してください。
Ooh, that is a good point, yeah. They could bring in an antidote, but she'd be like, alright, then you take it. I didn't know it's real.
了解です。手配します。
あと前原さんと竜宮レナが間違ってない。あと盗聴器もオフにさ。盗聴器はどう？面白いことは拾いました。
犯人が人質に危害を加えている模様です。
なんて。
どうも園崎ミオンに対してのようです。
やめろレナ。
Reina kept hitting Mion, who had her hands tied behind her back. Reina wasn't using her fists, but instead the handle of her hatchet.
圭一君はそこの壁動いたらレナも怒るんだからね。
Reina's gaze intimidated me. Her eyes were full of madness. I could feel Reina's emotions boiling over on the inside. If I opposed her, she would easily cut Mion's arm off.
とにかく私が許せなかったことは信じてたのに。
Reina hit Mion's face over and over. It wasn't just Mion's hands that were tied behind her. Her neck was also tied to a window frame with a bike lock, so there was no way that Mion could protect her face. I didn't know if her forehead was cut or if her nose was bleeding, but her face was covered in blood. Her blood got on the handle of the hatchet, and every time she got hit with it, more blood was smeared on her face. The handle of the hatchet could easily smash her forehead. Because of her position in the Sonozaki family, Mion couldn't say that she hid the bodies, so all she could do was endure. However, Reina continued to attack her. Reina no longer had any restraint. She might even continue until Mion's front teeth were broken.
やめるんだミオン。俺が話す。本当のことを話すからレナ。
本当って圭一君。
ダメだよ。
クラスのみんな今から言う話は少し物騒な話をするかもしれない。だから聞かないでくれ。頼む。
どういう話だろう。聞かせてくれる？
難しい話じゃ。あれは埋めた場所が今年の夏に。だからあのままじゃまずいと思ってミオンが
その話はそしてそんなのは
なんで嘘なんか。仲間を助けるのはだからミオンがお前。
嘘だよ。ならなんでそんなことを私に相談せずにこっそりとやったの？
Why did Mion even have to tell her? Mion was trying to be delicate. Mion did her best trying to hide what Reina did. Mion knew Reina was at her wit's end and that's why she did it in secret. But Reina didn't want to believe her.
違うよ圭一君まで騙すなんて。部活で騙すのは許せるけど仲間である圭一君を騙すなんて許せない。許せない。許せない。
やめろ。ミオンは悪くない。
I never knew having your hands tied behind your back was that scary. Mion got hit repeatedly with the handle of the hatchet. She could only endure. She couldn't even protect herself with her hands.
ねえ、そうならなんで
ミオンに話せない。園崎家のそれより気を使ってくれたことをお前が感謝すべきじゃないか。
I may have said it too aggressively. Reina turned around and glared at me.
そうだよ園崎家の都合で仲間の私を仲間なのに友達なのにひどいよみーちゃん。本当に大好きな一番のお友達だったのにどうしてひどいよ。
This was senseless. Reina cried as if being bullied, but she was the one doing the bullying. Normally this would be so odd as to be impossible, but I had seen this scene before. I liked you. I trusted you. As I cried, I beat her to death. Reina repeatedly begged me to trust her, yet I beat her. I know what it's like to be the one doing the beating. Stop. Stop, stop, stop. Stop, Reina. Don't you realize what you're doing? You're hurting your friend with your own hands. I understand what you're feeling. I know you're sad because your friend betrayed you, right? But that's a misunderstanding. We didn't betray you. We've been thinking about you all this time. But she just couldn't see that. Even if she died, Reina probably wouldn't realize she'd made a terrible mistake. But someday, you'll realize. Even an insensitive guy like me realized, so Reina would realize it for sure. And that's when you'll feel even sadder, Reina. You'll remember this bloody Mion one day. Then you'll realize that you were the one who made her bloody, and you'll regret that you did. But I was the only one who could understand that, because I remembered. There was no way for Reina to understand or realize any of that. I wondered if I was suffering the most of all. There was no way to avoid a tragedy. This was exactly the same tragedy with different actors. The main character was Reina instead of me, but it was the same thing. Where was I? I was in the audience now. I knew how the story ended, but I couldn't come onto the stage.
やめてくれ。
泣いてるの？どうしたの、ケイチ君。
I stood up slowly and walked towards Reina, just like what Reina did for me with my arms open.
頼むからやめてくれ。今はなぜやめなければならっても。やめないと。だから。
壁に戻らないと。レナは怒るよ。
Reina's, oh my god. Reina's eyes went cold. She lifted the hatchet in her right hand. Fuck.
やめな、ケイちゃん。私は大丈夫だから。
Mio told me. With such a bloody face, how could she be?
レナはその中で。
それ以上叩くよ。遠慮なく。もうケイチ君なんかいなくても私はだからね。
She sounded gentle, but her expression was telling me there really would be no hesitation. Reina would crack my head open with the hatchet immediately. But who cares?
レナは命を惜しむと思うか？
当然だよ。相手が凶器を持ってたら。
嘘だな。
I know. I know you're strong enough to give up your own life for the sake of your friend. It's my turn now. My turn to be strong.
俺も仲間のためなら、レナが欲しいってなら、だから仲間を信じてるなら、その痛みは必ず誰もレナを脅かし、みんながレナのためを、それを疑う。頼むから俺を信じろ。俺の頭を砕けば信じられるってんなら、そのナタを撃ち下ろせばいい。俺は防がねえからな。
近寄るな。それ以上近づけばライターを点火するよ。
Reina lifted the lighter overhead.
てめえ、いつまで夢を見て。自分でも分かってんだ。悪い夢だって。誰かに覚ましてほしいって。だから俺が覚ましに来たんだ。
覚ますのはケイチ君。この村が奴らに侵略されていること。あの時はちゃんとまた疑うの？また私を信じないの
Reina opened the lid of the lighter. I could tell her thumb was about to light it. Reina was prepared to die along with everyone else. Reina would die without knowing the truth. She would die believing it was the world that was crazy. She would die cursing everything in this world. That was the storyline of this tragedy, wasn't it? This was a theater from hell. What an interesting script. Who wrote it? A devil? Shit. I won't let this happen. Don't underestimate Keiichi Maibara, the original main character. Don't think the same storyline will work again. I'll be taking over the script this time, and I'm going to destroy it. I won't let this bad ending take place. I'm going to destroy their expectations.
信じてねえのは今は俺を信じろ。それは絶対に前回の惨劇の主人公、先代主人公の言うこと。
何を言ってるのか。黙って俺を信じてないのはどうして私を。
やかま。俺はお前の末路を知っていて、仲間を自らの手で殺し、それがどんなに悲しいことか。
全然大丈夫なの？
ああ、そう。何を言ってるか。でも話して。ある大バカ野郎の話。あるところにそいつはみんなと楽しく過ごす気に、そして何もかもが疑わしく感じるようになってきて。
He didn't notice how worried his friends were, and he hurt them repeatedly. How sorrowful. They trusted each other, but they couldn't let each other know. Can you believe something as stupid as that actually happened?
そしてなのにお前は最後、俺に殴り殺される最後かばおうとしなかった。最後まで俺を信じて。それがどれだけすげえことか。俺はそれがどれだけ罪深いことか。だから俺は俺の罪を滅ぼすために。
それ
レナが命を懸けて俺を救おうとして。俺はレナがどんなに立派な最後、あの瞳には自分が殺されるかもしれないなんて怯えはわずかもなかった。
These words will reach him, she thought. These next words will make Keiichi-kun realize.
俺を信じろ、レナ
That was when Reina hit my head with the hatchet. I crumbled down to the floor. She hit me with the handle, but my head was probably cut open. felt the blood on my face.
かわいそう。それは圭一くんの頭に寄生。今に大石さんがそうなったら一番最初に飲ませて。そうしたらもうレナの大好きだった圭一だからもう少し待っててね。
このバカ野郎が
I heard a phone ringing in the teacher's office. Raina listened to the phone ring for a while, then realized it was for her. Raina tried to answer the phone in the classroom. She couldn't figure out how to transfer the call, so she decided to answer it in the teacher's office instead.
ちょっとその間に誰か一人でもいなくなってたらみーちゃんが大変なことになっちゃうんだからね。
Raina glared at everyone in the classroom, intimidating them, and then left. That was when I heard a honk from the outside. I remembered the signal from earlier. Did someone want to get in touch with me? I bent down and put the receiver earphone in my ear.
聞こえますか？沖宮署の熊。聞こえているなら関よかった。今から言う犯人が撒いたガソリンは今教室内には気化したガソリンですから、竜宮さんを刺激し、さっきのような挑発行為は気化ガソリンはわずかですので、この連絡を。これはそれから最後、犯人は次元
なんだって。
キッチンタイマーを流用した次元発火装置で、現在竜宮レナの用ですが、予告ではタイマーの設定は午後7時。
I looked at the wall clock. It was 6:45 p.m. There were only 15 minutes left. I could hear Raina screaming into the phone.
いいえ、時間通りです。急いでくださいね。1秒たりとも遅れることは許しません。
聞こえてると思いますが、あと15分で本気で心中するつもりです。
I remembered thinking the same way as Raina. After I killed Raina and Mio, and I knew the police would come. I thought someone would solve the mystery after I was dead. That's what Raina was thinking, then she had been planning to kill herself from the beginning.
それで
睡眠薬がもうだが交渉中に爆発したら、あなたに次元発火装置を見つけた。
よく映画で見るような。
もっと簡単な。犯人の予告によるならば、電池でなくコンセントに挿して動くタイプの。教室内のコンセントに何か刺さっていませんか？
There was one outlet in the back, another at the front of the classroom. I checked, but I didn't see anything that was plugged in.
いや、
よその場所で発火しても間違いなく。
いや、廊下からコードが引かれてるのはそのキッチンタイマーが
電源を供給する。あるいはその教室以外にもガソリンの充満した部屋。
学校中を調べろって。あと15。くそ、俺は負傷中なんだぜ。
But if I stayed here, I'd die in 15 minutes. This wasn't a time to be pessimistic. This was probably my last chance to stop this tragedy from taking place. She spread the gasoline while I went out to deliver the scrapbook, so she must have done it in a fairly short time. I really didn't think she had enough time to spread it anywhere else other than the classroom. Then where was the time bomb?
こちらも努力ですから以上です。質問がなければこれで更新を
特にない。あ、いや、一つ。
何でしょう？
大石の親父によくも人の古傷を。もし俺が生きてここを出られたら、2発殴るぜ。俺のことをレナに喋った分と。レナ。
了解。大石さんも竜宮レナに踊らさ、きっと殴らせてくれます。以上でよろしいです。
ああ、このおしゃべりだけですっきりぜ。
ご無事を。
Raina was still on the phone. Oishi-san was definitely trying to stall her. From what I could hear, it sounded like he's telling her that they investigated the main Sonozaki residence and found something awful in their secret basement or something like that. Hey, if you went too far, Raina would believe everything again. Raina was going to get hit again for lying.
Keiichi.
Riki-chan Satoko crawled up to me.
今の俺の無線聞いてた。
トラップはレナさんにお株を奪われるなんて、こんなの死んでも死にきれませんわ。
Satoko realized how serious the situation was as well. Lives of the hostages, including her own, were about to be taken. Yet she tried to remain strong.
サトコ、もしレナは運悪くだってそうだろ。俺たちはあんなにも。
サトコ、僕はレナもみんなも素敵な。あんなミオンさんにあんな乱暴する。サトコだって心の中の鬼が暴れ出してどんなに悲しく。
Satoko quietly hung her head. I didn't understand what Riki-chan was trying to say to Satoko, but maybe.
レナさんを。
偉いぞ、サトコ。
I hugged Satoko's head. Riki-chan's arms were tied, so she couldn't embrace Satoko, but she put her forehead closer to her in praise.
さて、この部屋を爆破するには
お任せなさい。その装置はコンセントにつな。
ああ、そうだ。でもこの部屋とは限らないぞ。他の部屋にもガソリンが撒いてあって、そこに。
いいえ、 そんな時間はなかったと思いますです。多分レナは教室のすぐ近くに
そういやレナは昨べ俺と別れってことは何かの仕掛けを
それだけのヒントでなかなかに意地悪な難易度の
聡子なら聡子に見つけられないな。だから俺は聡子を信じて。
聡子ならできます。レナを救うためにも見つけだ仕方ありませんわね。本気の私の前にはレナさんのトラップなんて問題。
さあもう一度この部屋を爆発させるなら次元発火装置をどこに仕掛ける？
Satsuko grinned and then closed her eyes to concentrate. Fuck.
なんですかあんたたちは。
どきたまえ。ここの責任者は誰だね。
Several cars had arrived, producing several men. They weren't from the Okonomiya station. One of the men was wearing a suit despite the hot weather. He approached me, pushing Kumagai aside.
おや、これは。お久しぶりですね。県警本部の大高くんじゃありませんか。
言葉を慎みたまえ。もう君にくんと呼ばれる階級ではない。
何かご用ですかね。大高くん、今非常に立て込んでいます。まさか県警がこの現場を乗っ取ろうつもりで？誰の了解で？
私が許可した、大石君。高杉君から事情、君がまいた種だという話も聞いて、君はもう下がって。
機動隊って。大高君、あんたまさか吸収する気ですか？
危険は重々だがもう爆発まで時間がない。君が時間を浪費し、その尻拭いを君らは引き継いで後方に下がりたまえ。
I couldn't talk back, both the chief and a guy from the prefectural headquarters gave me an order.
おいさ、
大高昔麻雀がくっそ弱いくせに生きがってたからちょいと叩き潰してやったことが。それともあれかな、剣道大会で偉そうにしてやがったから面食らわして失神させたのを根に持ってるのかな。
Obviously we didn't get along.
大石君、
あんたこっちはもうすぐ睡眠薬でそれをひっくり返す気。
もう遅す。あと1時間あったら突入は府警の専門部隊が君はバックアップに回りたまえ。
あんた分かってますよね。あの教室はだが一番恐ろしい爆弾は教室じゃない。犯人の竜宮連。我々はようやくそれをなだめ。時間は確かにもう10。でも必ず講習は私が自ら。ダメなら私が所長たちは離れてする。
大石君、府警の専門部隊はただの第二機動隊といえば君ほどの男な。
なんすか大石さん。第二機動隊って5
年くらい前だっけ。空港の飛行機に犯人が立てこもった事件があったでしょう。あれをきっかけに東京と大阪にハイジャック専門の特殊部隊が組織された。
でもなんだって府警の機動隊がこんなところに。
Otaka smiled proudly.
たまたま県警機動隊との交流訓練が特別に応援を要す。
話をすぐ派手にしたがるその癖は。
Company members exited the vehicles one after another and took position. They didn't move like policemen.
大高君、あんた学校で一発で大爆発を起こすぞ。
安心し、突入班が使うのボート鎮圧用のガス銃、高圧ガスで催涙ガスを。何の問題もない。
へえ、そりゃあ便利な水鉄砲。ところでそのおもちゃは校庭を。
それは君が心配することではない。あとは我々に任せて下がりたまえ。
As I lifted my arms exaggeratedly, one elbow accidentally touched their car horn, which honked. Of course, I did it on purpose.
今のは前原圭一。
ねえ、そう、前原君が気づい。
今さら彼に何？
連中は多分グレネードか何かでガラスをぶち。連中は竜宮レナを甘く。彼女は本気だ。ガラスの割れる音でもライターをためらわず展開。
特殊部隊には制圧できないってことですか？
できないに決まっ。だから今まで慎重にやってきたんじゃないの。竜宮レナは初めから死ぬつもりなんだよ。命が惜しくない奴に突入なんて意味がないんだよ。前原さんしかいない。
おい、繋がりました。
もしもし、聞こえてたら緊急の話が聞いてください。
どうせ悪い話。
悔しいですが県警が介入してきてお膳立てを。特殊部隊が。
おいおい、護身用突入なんて。
県警は竜宮さんがすでに死ぬ気である。ライターは脅しで 点火するわけないと多分5分突入する前に。
それは次元破
ねえ、そう。
マジかよ。あと5分でレナからライターを奪って次元破壊そうやってくれ。
あなただけが頼りな。頼みます。
どうですか？思いつきますですか？1階の廊下だけが知りたいんです。そこにあるかないか、レナさんの行動パターンから考えて、1階ならあそこ、2階ならあそこ。
1階の廊下をコードが横断してないか。
多分普段のレナさんなら断言できますけど、今のレナさんはノイズだらけで行動パターンが読み切れませんわ。
よし、任せろ。もう悩むにも時間が足りねえよ。最後の2択は俺が直接探る。
I don't want another tragedy. You demons down in hell. I bet you're just waiting for an amusing ending to unfold while eating some popcorn. I won't let that happen. I'm going to change everything. And then I'm going to make you pick up your popcorn off the floor. I spoke to Raina as she continued on with her story about the aliens.
何？どうしたのケイチ？
いや、今音が聞こえ。
Raina went quiet and looked around. Raina had become totally paranoid about everything. I guess that's a great thing to use towards someone who's suffering from severe paranoia. It's like, did you hear that? Oh, fuck. Once she became worried, she couldn't ignore it.
本当にケイチ君？
ああ、聞き間違いじゃない。
I knew she'd want to check it herself, but she really couldn't leave the room for something like that. So in that case, she'd have to ask me to check for her. Raina must have been thinking the same thing.
ケイチ君、見てきて。
Raina gave me an order with a fake smile on her lips.
ああ、わかった。
Raina watched me go out into the hallway. As I did, she spoke to
レ
me.
ナを怒らせちゃいや。
信用しろ。俺はレナの。
信じるから。裏切っちゃ嫌だからね。
After being freed from Raina, I looked for a cord in a hurry. Didn't even have 5 minutes. The office probably had more outlets than anywhere else. I headed for the teacher's office. Shit, where were the outlets? Unlike light switches, outlets couldn't always be found near entrances. Damn it, why did the clock in the teacher's office have to make such a loud ticking noise?
大丈夫なのですよ。レナさんなら、いつものレナさんより疑り深いレナさんならこの程度がわからなくて、レナさんのトラップで最後なんて。
なんだこれ。
I saw a plug inserted into the unit under the principal's desk, and I also saw a cord extending from under the door into the reception room. There shouldn't have been any reason why a cord had to be extended into that room. The reception room had outlets of its own. Tiptoed over to the reception room and opened the door. The door squeaked as I cracked it open a little. Poked my head inside the reception room. I saw the suspicious cord crossing the room and extending under the door to the hallway. I followed the cord through the reception room. I opened the door to the hallway, and the cord was extending into the storage closet. The storage closet was used to hold cleaning chemicals. I could smell them from here. The cord was extending into there. I carefully opened the door and turned the light on. The cord was attached to another extension cord, and there was an alarm clock that didn't belong in there.
見つけた。
The time bomb. So all I'd have to do was to unplug the cord, pick up the alarm clock. It looked like a normal alarm clock. Actually, it was a normal alarm clock. I remembered Kumagai calling it a kitchen timer, so it was a bit like an alarm clock. This wasn't a bit like an alarm clock. It was an alarm clock. Wait, didn't alarm clocks use batteries? This alarm clock was a battery-operated one too. I looked at the extension cord, and there was nothing plugged into it. Eh? What was this extension cord for? Why was this extending all the way from the teacher's office?
いけない、逃げて。
佐藤。
それは違うんですの。騙された。
A black shadow was covering me. I felt my body freeze. It was so frozen that I felt it was about to crack. I turned around slowly. I saw someone holding a hatchet above their head. I dropped the alarm clock. It made a noise as it hit the ground.
どうしてケイチ君は延長コードをたどって目覚まし時計なんか持ってるのかな？
All the cells in my body were frozen. This was Reina's trap. Reina was suspicious of everyone, including me. This whole time, she thought there was someone connected to the people outside. This was a trap to lure that person out. Only the people outside knew about the time bomb. I was told about the whole thing, and so I followed the extension cord and picked up the alarm clock. How stupid of me.
待て、レナ。
ケイ よ、圭一くん。
Reina hit me with the backside of the hatchet earlier. It was painful, but it didn't kill me. But this time, she was holding the hatchet the right way. It wouldn't just crack my forehead, it would split my entire head open. Reina lifted the hatchet mercilessly. She moved slowly, as if everything was in slow motion. She looked almost divine. Maybe it really was holy. I was praying after all. Praying? What was I praying for? I was praying for my life. No. It was so sudden I couldn't tell what happened. Riki-chan had jumped onto Reina from behind. I didn't know what kind of weapon Riki-chan used, but Reina started moaning. It clearly hurt. That brought me back to reality. Couldn't just watch them. I had to get the lighter from Reina. Reina knew I was after the lighter. She closed her fingers around it tightly. Riki-chan was grabbing onto the arm Reina was holding the hatchet in. I wanted to tell her to run, but thanks to Riki-chan, I could use both my hands to get at the lighter. The lighter flew out of Reina's hand, hit the hallway wall, and dropped down to the floor. I picked it up. Same moment I did, Reina managed to shake off Riki-chan. There's our chance. I turned in Satoko's direction. I heard Satoko screaming from the classroom. Satoko had figured out where Reina hit the time bomb. I wanted to catch Reina, but I didn't have time for that. I had to do something about the time bomb instead. Riki-chan had spread her arms, blocking Reina's path forward. I didn't know what Riki-chan was talking about. There was one thing I did know. Just like Reina and Mio and Rei to give up their lives for their friends, and I was willing to give up mine. Riki-chan was prepared for that too. Therefore, telling Riki-chan to run was like telling her she wasn't my friend. So I'll depend on my friend Riki-chan. Leaving it to Riki-chan, I dashed for the classroom. As soon as Rika heard Keiichi's footsteps reach the classroom door, she sighed in relief. As she did, Reina's black shadow came ever closer. Rika grabbed a mop as she ran from the storage closet. She picked it up and held it upside down like a spear. Rika's stance told Reina that she was ready to fight. Rika didn't look like a little girl anymore. She looked so brave that Reina was even startled by it. Rika smiled cynically. Rika usually never smiled this way. Reina raised her hatchet and charged at Rika with a scream. Reina looked like a beast charging toward its prey. Rika took a step backwards and lowered her body, preparing to counterattack. She did that with no hesitation. Just fuck explaining, just give... What do you mean all the hints were in place? Just tell him the location. You don't need to give him the play-by-play breakdown, like, just tell him where it is. It's simple if you just remember. Come on, it's quite obvious when you do. Just, what the fuck? Just give... Stop playing riddles and rhymes, just tell him where it is. We had been smelling gasoline coming from outdoors. There were no forestry service people in the office, so they weren't doing any work today. The smell wasn't coming from anything they were doing. In other words, it was the smell of Reina's gasoline. Yes? Reina hid the gasoline near the classroom. She had it in a plastic container. You You can't smell gasoline that's in a plastic container. So in other words, she had more gasoline rather than just in the container she used to spray around the classroom. Okay. Where was the smell coming from? Was it coming from outside? Vaporized gasoline is heavier than air. Okay, so it's the room above them. It sinks. There was another hint other than that. Kids who love to play with their ball never lose it. It should have been in the same place as it always was, but it was gone. So that must mean that Reina used it for something. The gasoline was coming from above. A ball was missing, so maybe it was stuffed somewhere.
レナさんは雨どいの出口をボールで詰めて雨どいいっぱいにガソリンを注いだ。どこから？ 2階の屋根の上からですのよ。
The drain canal extended along the roof of the second floor, and then came straight down to the ground. It was plugged and filled with gasoline. It was like a huge Molotov cocktail that extended from the ground to the roof of the second floor. Furthermore, the drain canal ran by the classroom windows. If the canal exploded, the classroom would explode too.
じゃあ次元発火装置は
2階の窓から延長コードか何かで引っ張って屋根の上ですわ。
Picked up a pair of scissors and cut Satoko's
そうい
bonds.
やリカちゃんはどうやって治っ
あるございましたわね。私は溶けるほど痩せてなくて。
I rubbed Satoko's head. Yeah,
みん
okay.
なを頼む。
Enough pleasantries. Take care of the
屋
bomb.
上へ行く。
As I jumped out of the classroom, Satoko stopped me.
ケイキさん、
なんだよ。まだ何かあるのか。
Something silver sailed through the air. I caught it. It was a metal bat.
ニーニーのですのよ。後でちゃんと返してもらう。
ああ、すまん、佐藤。
Metal bat fit right in my palm. I didn't even feel its weight. It really eased my mind. The name Satoshi was written on the handle. This was the bat that belonged to Satoko's brother, Satoshi. He was the victim of last year's tragedy. You and I were the same. I won't let another tragedy take place. I'll treat this as a gift from you, who is waiting in the wings. Let's rip apart the script of this demonic tragedy together. Let's go, Satoshi. As I tried to run up the stairs, I heard a loud noise coming from the hallway by the teacher's office. I saw Rika-chan rolling on the floor. Damn, Rika-chan. You held down as long as you could.
くそ、身体年齢が。あっさ
あ。やべえ、今は屋根の上だ。
でもさせるもんか。
Reina's face looked unbelievably scary. She was ready to rip me apart if she caught me. In that case, just try me. I jumped up the stairs, skipping every other step. Turned on the bug in my pocket. Didn't have time to put in the earphones. As Reina flew up the stairs, her foot got caught in a jump rope. She tripped and then 3 buckets fell on her head. The result of Satoko's trap. Satoko leaned against the wall and waved her index finger in a mocking gesture.
なかなかの背を言ってましたけど、まだまだこの私とトラップ勝負。さとこちゃん、後年は距離だよ。
Fourth bucket hit Satoko on the head. We continued up to the rooftop. Reina ignored Satoko and ran after me.
大石さんか。やったぞ。ライターは奪っ次元発火装置も分かってる。今抑えに行ってる。
大石さん、まさかあれじゃ。
She grabbed the pair of binoculars from Kumagai and looked at the rain gutter on the rooftop. There was something like an alarm clock sitting there. The cord from the clock was extending to the second floor window. It was so obvious, but they didn't even notice until just then. Satoko was working hard to remove her classmates' restraints, but she couldn't do anything about the bike lock on Mion's neck.
みんな、私はあら、こういう瞬間でも我が部の部長らしくあるべきではございません。部長はただ一言、こいつを外せと命令遊ばされれば結構ですのよ。
Satoko reached from the back of her collar and produced a bent hairpin. Satoko opened the window, climbed onto the windowsill, and faced the bike lock that was restraining Mion.
みんなは前原さんはケイちゃんは警察、みんなはとにかくで、もう外したの？
北条聡子にとって U 字ロックの U はうわ、こんなの楽勝の U でございましたよ。
Binoculars were trained on the classroom. All the curtains were open as well as the windows. The children in turn were all running out into the schoolyard. Oishi pushed Otaka aside, then grabbed his radio and yelled into it.
人質を全員、犯人は人質1名を追って。
これ、大石君、無線を返したまえ。
God damn. Otaka tried to grab the radio from Oishi, but Kumagai stepped in. There was a dull noise, and Otaka crumbled to the floor, convulsing.
ああ、膝がたまたまきれいに入っちゃったっすね。
Oh, whoops.
教室内にはまだガソリンが充ガス弾や閃光弾の類の使用は禁ずる。大爆発するぞ。か扉を打ち破る。教室真正面です。ガソリン臭濃厚。火災に着指示を待ちます。くそ、ブレーカーを落とせば電源室は放棄。2階突入班了解。大高君、電源室確保失敗時はどう。それにこれだから坊ちゃん、あとは時計のコンセントを押さえるしかないか。
おいさん、前原君です。
スピーカーを貸せ。前原さん、時計の電源は2階の奥の部屋。
I shook my head repeatedly. I couldn't do that. Raina was coming after me, so I couldn't head that way. What else could I do? The only way was to go up to the roof to the second floor and get the clock from there. Oshi-san was telling me to go further up. Satoko only told me that it was on the rooftop of the second floor, and she didn't tell me where exactly. She only said it was in the drain canal. But maybe Oshi-san found it with his binoculars. Put my foot on the railing of the veranda and ran up to the rooftop. And never felt so light. Felt like I could lift myself with just 2 or 3 fingers. 30 seconds would be plenty of time. I could get there in half that. Over there. Was that it? It was!
実はそういうのは軍隊で前原さん追ってきては急いで追い詰められる。
How many more seconds did I have? Ah, who cares? I slid down the roof and grabbed the kitchen timer that was sitting on the drain pipe, which was filled with gasoline. There was a cord with a copper wire attached to it. It was supposed to create sparks and start an explosion. The hands on the clock kept moving, with the second hand trying to reach the minute hand. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. I threw it to the ground. A moment later, I heard the noise of something breaking. Did I do it?
Yes! Oh, やった。
圭一さんはちょっとハラハラさせすぎですわね。
Okay, but like, he's still not out of the wood. Oh god, is it gonna come down to like an actual like fucking 1v1 fight? No one's gonna use like, sniper bullets because the live ammo might cause, a fucking spark that'll cause some issue and whatnot. So it's actually gonna be her with her hatchet, him with the bat, having a fucking 1v1 on the rooftop. Bro.
余裕がないのはエレガントではありませんでしたよ。
Not only policemen, but the children who were on their way to ambulances raised their voices in cheer.
おいさん、消防から現場は依然危険度最大につき、突入班全員の即
次元発火装置はもう
発火装置がなくても、これ以上は突入班全員の生命に危険があります。
くそ、屋上の前原2階屋根。
おいさん、図面では降車し、そこへ飛び降りるように誘導しましょう。
おいしより作戦中止。聞こえますか。それからもうそこは危険。いつ爆発。校舎の下に花壇があります。
花壇だって。畜生。ここからじゃよくわかんねえってのによ。
But it didn't sound like I had enough time to be looking for it. I noticed a white hand at the edge of the roof, followed by Reina's head. Reina slowly crawled up to the rooftop. I waited for her there.
まさかこれで全て失敗か。
Reina scratched at her throat. The band-aids peeled off and her throat started to bleed.
ゲームセットだな、レナ。
We were confronting each other on the rooftop of the second floor. God fucking damn. This whole... Bro, it's peak. It's peak. The whole chapter started with their little water gun fight where they're having the 1v1. They're like, we still haven't settled our dispute yet, have we? And then there was the whole thing, like, they took it to, like, Angel Moore. They're like, oh yeah, we'll have the whole... We'll eat all this food, and then we'll have the eating competition. But then other people weren't them joined in. So now it's like, they're finally gonna find out once and for all, huh? Because she knows she's at the end of her rope. She's got nothing else to lose. He knows he can't just run or else he's dead. Oh. This wasn't a club activity, but a real battle. Reina was glaring at me with hatred at first. But maybe because she had already given up, she started smiling wickedly. I heard the chorus of the Higurashi in the background, as if to cool us down from the heat of battle. I didn't think we needed their service yet, though.
そうだね。でもこれはゲームだからここはゴールじゃなくて行きど
負けを認めないやつだな。レナはつくづく強い。絶対へこたれない。最後まで戦う。そして最後まで信じるんだ。
こんな時に褒められても圭一君は私が最後の命を懸けての計画を人類を宇宙人から守ろうと必死に戦ってたのに、これで人類が滅んじゃったら圭一君のせいで滅んだって歴史に残っちゃうんだよ。
I didn't mean to laugh, but I couldn't help it. God damn it, Keiichi. My name would be written down in the history books of the aliens as the one who destroyed the human species. But somehow that sounded kind of cool. Hell yeah.
お前が何と言おうとすでに俺が勝ってるのにレナが。
そうだね。
でもゲームってのは敗者が決まって終わるもんなんだ。ってことは俺がへえ、それはどういう意味なのかな。
Tapped my shoulder with the metal bat, gesturing for Reina to come at me.
レナにきっちり負けたってことを叩き込んでやろうってことだよ。
I won't run or hide. Do you know why? According to the rules of our club, we don't run from our enemies.
ここで白黒レナがもう負けてるってことよ。言ってやるぜ。寄生虫に宇宙人バカじゃね。そんなの今時だ鼻で笑っちまうで。
最初から信じてなかったくせに信じてたふりをしてレナを騙してたな。許せない許せない。
レナが信じてるのは勝手だが、俺はそんな同じ信じるなら徳川の埋蔵金の方が楽しそうだぜ。それでも信じさせたいってんなら俺たち部活メンバーには簡単な信じさせ方があるじゃねえかよ。
勝った方が正義ってことだね。
そういうことさ。
Reina and I grinned at each other, and as we went around in circles on the rooftop, we both checked the distance between us.
レナが俺をぶちのめせたな。朝晩 UFO を呼ぶ怪しげな踊りをして。だがなレナ、俺にグーの音が出ない。
それを取り決める必要はないかな。圭一君なんかに私が負けるはずないもん。
Reina came at me with a heavy strike. I caught it easily with the metal bat. Looked like there were some sparks. This was finally getting interesting. Sparks.
まあそう言うなよ。俺も部活で何度も激戦を自分ってやつをな。どういう時に自分が最高のパワーを出せるか分かってきたんだ。へ
え、それは何かな。かな。
Cause like there's still gas in the drain canal, right? Like he took care of the timer, but like as far as we know, the ball is still plugging up the canal, right? So a stray spark is this really gonna be an explosive finish? Reina, your hatchet can be a powerful weapon. My metal bat is as powerful as your hatchet. Sure, it doesn't have a blade, but it reaches farther and it's easy to handle. I won't be going for a defensive battle. I'm going to fight you face to face, and I'm going to defeat you. I'm sure I'm stronger than you physically, but you're better at drawing out your true potential, Reina. In other words, we're equally matched. This is great. I won't need to hold back at all.
私を叩きのめしたらどうするって？ほらほらほらほら！押されてるんじゃないかな。
遊んでやって。まあ見てろ。レナをコテンパンにしたらこれだけ互いにコインやチップをかけまくってるんだ。相当の支払いを覚悟してもらうぜ。
得ることの叶わない勝利に酔うもまた川山陽の醍醐味だね。圭一君の虚勢が痛々しいよ。
分かってないな。俺はご褒美のデカさに比例してパワーアップする男だぜ。そうだな。 もちろん俺専属の朝はおはようございますから夜はおやすみなさいまでたっぷりご奉仕だ。メイド衣装は監督に全面協力を受けて日替わりチェンジのお楽しみ。おお、夜はおやすみなさいまで。いや今夜は寝かさないぜ。
God.
なんてどうだ。
The fucking panting.
圭一くんらしいな。そんなのはごめんだね。むしろ私が勝って逆の立場にしてあげるよ。
We both laughed like crazy people as we struck at each other. It was strange how much fun it was becoming. Rain and I were trying to kill each other, and yet it was a blast. Sparks were flying. We could get seriously injured. If we fell off the rooftop, we'd break our bones, yet this was so much fun. I had been mourning and crying all day today while Reina terrified me. How did all that turn into this?
ってことは結局俺たちにシリアスは似合わねえってこった。互いの火花を浴び合いながらヘラヘラしてるのが互いに性に合ってるってわけだ。
おあいにくだね。レナはエレガントで上品なのが大好きなの。そういうヘラヘラしたのは圭一くんが一人でお楽しみ遊ばせ。
Reina's next strike came at a strange angle, but I managed to deflect it.
甘い甘い全然ダメだぜ。やっぱりお前ようやく体が温まってきたところだよ。こんなのウォーミングアップでしょ。はあ、バカなりゃしねえよ。こんなのお散歩程度。お前汗だくだぜ。
お前は汗の代わりに血を垂らせばいいや。
前原さん、飛び降りて飛び降りて。ダメっすね。
Nope.
血が上っちゃってるようで声が聞こえてないみたいです。おいさん。
何
をぼーっと。彼を救出する方法を考えないと。
I just couldn't figure out why he was distracted, considering the seriousness of the situation. He was engrossed in watching the two of them fight with the sunset behind them. Oishi wasn't the only one. Everyone watching was captivated by the battle on the rooftop. At that moment, a sudden loud voice broke the silence. Students who were about to climb onto the ambulance were cheering him on. Mion was being loaded onto a stretcher with bandages around her head. But even she sat up, captivated as she was by Reina and Keiichi's duel. The once happy days were supposed to have shattered due to a series of misunderstandings. They were supposed to be irretrievable. But, why? Why did I feel this way? This was such a close game. It wouldn't be fun to stay in a stalemate forever. Reina and I kicked at each other with perfect timing, and increased the distance between us.
楽しくなってきたぜ。どうだレナ、最高に楽しくねえか。
レナは最初から楽しいよ。でも圭一くんの頭を叩き割ったらもっと楽しいかな。
おらおら、こっちへ戻って足場を十分に使おうじゃねえか。こんな最高の舞台まんべんなく楽しもうぜ。
絵になるよ、絵になるね。私たちほらいつの間にか月を背負ってるんだね。風が気持ちいいや。
It was such a fantastical scene. Two people were fighting on the rooftop of the school building with the moon behind them. It was almost unbelievable. All the policemen and children looked at that mysterious, fantastical scene from a distance, completely entranced. Everyone was thinking the same thing. It's peak. But nobody said anything. Why does it look like they're having fun?
なんかよ、こういう涼しさでこう綿流しの祭りの時を思い出すんだよな。どうも俺は静かに夕涼みってのがダメでさ。月が出るとはしゃがずにはいられなくなっちまうんだよ。
All his club members went crazy on the night of Watanagashi. The mayor scolded us by the end of it, but we laughed at each other and promised to do the same thing again next year.
月にクルーか。なんだかかっこいいじゃない。私たちはもう月に狂ってるのかもしれないね。
ああ、同感だな。仲間と命のやり取りをしてて、そいつが面白いと感じちまうようじゃ、こいつがそうさ、ルナティックってやつだ。
Some people say the moon has the power to arouse passions in people. Maybe that's true, and maybe it's not. One thing that's for sure is that even if it were a new moon tonight, we would still feel the same way. As our surroundings got darker, the sparks we'd create with each hit started to look like fireflies. Hey now, isn't there gasoline in the drain pipe right nearby? Who cares? If an explosion happens, it happens.
ほら、何をやってんだか。バットが汗で滑ってるんじゃない？休憩にしてハンカチで手でも拭いたら、その間に頭を叩き割るけどね。
そいつはいいや。レナこそ汗でスカートがまとわりついて気持ち悪いだろ。脱いでもいいんだぜ。俺は手を出さないで見物するけどな。へ
え。それで足に見とれてる隙にガツンとお見舞いするよ。
楽しいな、レナ。
悪くないね。
We flew. We danced. We struck. We laughed. We stepped back once in a while to catch a breath, then charged at each other and let the sparks fly. We aimed at each other as we went around in circles on the rooftop of the school, our special stage. Rain and I were all sweaty, but we weren't exhausted yet. The beads of sweat rolling down my body just tickled me. We exchanged furious blows one after the other. Neither of us was at an advantage or disadvantage. Neither of us exulted in victory or raged in defeat. The battle with Reina in itself was fun. It was like a dance. A dance I couldn't dance by myself. It was a dance I could only dance with someone with whom I was equally matched.
あの時さ、クラス全体の部活の日、水鉄砲で一騎打ちした時さ、思わなかったか？
実は私も思ってた。
もう一回こんな戦いをしてみたいって。
Yep. As we thought that way on the rooftop, our classmates down below must have thought the same. Our fight was so pure and passionate that everyone thought the same thing. You know, whoever wins, like, there's gonna be a finale, right? Well, I guess the fucking school could explode also, but like, if one of them does manage to actually get the win, right? Everyone's gonna be like, yeah, let's go! Whoa, this is fucking awesome! Then eventually either Kate is gonna fucking crack her fucking head open with the bat, or she's gonna fucking cut his head open with the hatchet, and then everyone's gonna be like, oh, okay. Oh, right, yeah. Ooh. We want to join them.
あの時も同じだった。水鉄砲だったけど、やることは同じだった。
あの時より面白いぜ。今度は水の残量なんか気にしなくていいんだからよ。
水鉄砲じゃ火花も出ないしね。
撃ち合うこの感覚もないもんな。
We were both breathing hard, waiting for the right timing to take a step forward. In the midst of that, we grinned at each other.
あの時も多分言ったセリフだ。
じゃあレナもあの時と同じセリフで返そうかな。
We both smiled wickedly in the same moment.
やり合うのが楽しくてならん。決着がつくことすら興ざめするくらいにな。
負けても恨まないでね。
ああ、恨まない。この勝負を終わらせた自分の不甲斐なさを恨んで。だがそいつを恨むのは
どうかな。ケイチ君、足が藁だよ。
クソったれー。おりゃ
Everyone was captivated by our fight. They were swept up in our fight. We both had weapons. Weapons deadly enough to seriously hurt one another. But we were both perfectly matched, and neither of us had hit the other yet. Why did they look so happy? This was just ridiculous. All the people below were just watching this fight on the rooftop with the beautiful moon as a backdrop. Not even the police could stop them. This was impossible. This battle was absurd, and absolutely impossible.
ケイチさん、なるべく屋根のわずかの高みを生かすんですわ。
Satoko and some of her classmates cheered Keiichi on. There were some who were cheering for Reina too. That's fucking wild. Like, bro, all of the classmates were fucking tied up like an hour ago, fucking sitting on in essentially a time bomb. And they're like, nah, Reina, you got this though. To them, this is no longer a fight to the death. It was just the second round of their water gun battle. Yeah, exactly. But the moment someone does actually die, it's gonna be like, oh, right. A club activity is a club activity, and a game is a game. This was just the second round, so nobody would die. I don't believe that. Even though they had real weapons, nobody thought they would get hurt. Exactly. And someone's definitely going to get hurt. Rika wasn't cheering. She was just looking up at the rooftop.
こんなの見たことない。
Hell yeah. Rika thought to herself. She thought Keiichi could win, not just against Reina. Rika thought Keiichi could even destroy the walls of the maze of tragedies that had no exit.
狙撃犯は何をしてるのかね。人質に危害を加えようとしているのだぞ。直ちに射殺したまえ。
As Otake yelled into the radio, Mion screamed for him to stop.
レナを撃たない。レナはもう違う。さっきまでのおかしいあのレナは違う。だから撃たないで。
違う。見たまえ。現に凶器を振り、明らかな殺意。射殺しないと人質が危ないのだよ。
レナを撃っちゃいけない。もしもレナを撃ったら断言できる。
どうして私をなのかね。
あの二人は殺し合い、ただ撃ち合って火花見てわかるでしょ。そしてケイちゃんは語り、自分がレナと対等というのは一番信頼できるということ。ケイちゃんはレナの目を覚ませる。いや、もう覚ましつつあるんだよ。レナの悪い夢はもう終わりつつあるんだ。
ケイチ君は君だけは殺したくない。君がいない世界はさぞや退屈だろうと思うよ。
なんだか照れるんでどうするんだ。宇宙人の侵略があって大変じゃねえのかよ。
宇宙人なんて寄生虫なんてなんだかどうでもいいような気がしてくるよ。世界が滅ぶならいつでも好きな時に滅べばいいし。
ああ、そうさ。たとえ明日隕石がぶつかって
今この瞬間より楽しいことなんて他にあるもんか。
それにお前毒を盛られてて余命の短いやつがピンピンしやがって。
そうだったね。すっかり
なんだよ、自分で作っほれ。たまには首分かってるよ。そりゃそうさ。首を引っかくより
私たちはもっと楽しいことをしているんだもの。
I wished it would never end, but my body was screaming. I was breathing hard and felt dizzy from lack of oxygen. My upper body felt as light as a piece of paper, as if even a slight breeze could take me away. Gotcha. It really had been a blast, but it needed to end soon. I felt the same sadness as in that water gun fight. Back then, it had been declared a draw.
今回はどうなるだろうね。
さてな、一つ言えることが最高に楽しかったぜ。
I jumped backwards and slammed the roof with my bat. The sound was as intense as a huge drum, and the noise woke up the people who were captivated by our fight. The sounds returned. And the chorus of the Higurashi filled the air.
じゃあ
そうだね、次の一撃で今度こそ決着をつけよう。
We started to move slowly and increase the distance between us. Everyone realized it. This fight was ending very soon.
じゃあもう一回確認するぜ。おいおい、この戦いはお前そのために戦ってたんじゃなかったのかよ。
そうだったっけ。
仕方ねえやつだ。確認するぜ。まずは俺の専属メイドになってご奉仕三昧の前に人前ではこれが私のご主人様ですって。可愛い
服じゃないと嫌。
そこは任せろ。監督の完全監修のもと、古式ゆかしいオールドスタイルからちょっとドキドキな改造メイド服までいろいろと取り揃える。もちろん特注でレナにぴったりとフィットするサイズなんだ。すごいだろ。
すごいっす。負ける気はさらさらないけど、なんだか楽しそう。
次はレナが勝った場合だ。
I paused for a moment.
レナが勝ったなら俺はレナの話を信じる。
Reina was happy until just a moment ago. The expression was suddenly wiped from her
宇
face.
宙人が地球侵略に来て、そしてそれを園崎家が暗躍してて秘密研究をして、あと最後はちゃんと見とってやるから。
なんだか私が勝ってもつまんないね。
Damn, if I win, like everything kind of sucks, doesn't it? Oh wow, you believe my stories and I die peacefully. Okay.
ケイチ君が勝った方のご褒美の方が
仕方ねえだろ。お前そういう話だからわざわざ学校を乗っ取ったんじゃなかったのかよ。
そうだったんだっけ。ごめん、忘れそうになってたよ。
Reina smiled sadly for a moment, but soon that expression was wiped off her face too.
俺は何しろ意地でも勝ちに行くぜ。
ブーブー、レナが勝っても面白い。
なんだよ、レナが勝ったらどうするよ。
Finally, Reina smiled happily again. The breeze dried our sweat. It was a good feeling. We no longer went crazy, even with the moon out. We could finally enjoy the coolness of the evening. It'd be so nice if we could just lie down on our backs and gaze at the moon. Still smiling a little, Reina spoke.
私もケイチ君と同じご褒美がいいな。
なんだよそれ、俺がメイドかよ。どぎついな。
別にメイドさんじゃなくて、でも他は同じ。朝は私におはようって言って、夜は私におやすみって言ってほしい。いっぱい私に優しくしてほしい。いっぱい私を楽しくさせて。あれこれじゃ私が勝ってもケイチ君が勝っても私たちずっと一緒なんだよね。
一緒ではあるが待遇にえらい違いが。どう
してこんなにも大好きなケイチ君と私はこんなことをしてるんだろう。
さーてな、どうして俺たちは何しに俺たちはここへ登ったんだっけ。
どうしてだ、忘れちゃったよ。
バカと煙は上へ登るってやつだろ。じゃあ俺たちは
バカ仲間だね。
仲間だな。じゃあそろそろ行こうじゃないか。せっかくの体が。
そうだね、体が冷めちゃわないうちに決着をつけよう。
We raided our weapons and took our stances.
私ね、やっぱりやめないってそう言おうと思った。
I shook my head slowly.
ダメだ、決着は必要なんだ。じゃないと終わらない。せっかくの俺とお前の戦いがうやむやじゃダメなんだ。綺麗に終わらないとダメなんだ。
こんなのおかしい。ひょっとしたらどっちが勝っても負けても。
その時も恨みっこはなしだぜ。だから先に言っとく。
何？
楽しかったぜ。
私もだよ。
レナ、仮に俺たちのどちらかが死のうと。だから
今度は普通に遊んで普通に笑い合って普通に恋をしよう。絶対に互いを疑わない。互いを絶対に信じ合う。だから絶対に会えるよね。絶対だよね。
ああ、絶対だ。
Tears appeared in Reina's eyes. I noticed I was about to break down too.
じゃあ行くぜ。
There was no signal. but we stepped forward at the same time. Our shadows jumped in the moonlight. We were fighting so viciously earlier, but now it was like we were moving very slowly. It must have looked like a shadow play. Everyone was watching the shadows dance. Reina's shadow hit my metal bat violently. As a result, I let go of it. Metal bat bounced once on the roof, then rolled down to the schoolyard. I had lost my weapon. Here was Reina's chance. Of course, she wouldn't miss it. I was lying flat on the roof, and Reina got on top of me. Reina's knees were holding down my arms. There was no way for me to fight back. The moon was divided in two. The shadow of Reina's hatchet split the moon right down the middle. This was the end.
やるな、腕が。
ねえ、ケイチ君、もう決着ついたんだよね。
おいおい、そいつを振り下ろすまでは。
嫌だ。
うん？
嫌だよ。嫌だ。
Reina's arms were still raised, but tears were pouring from her
どう
eyes.
してどこで変にな。私はみんなを大好きで、みんなを信じていたはずなのに、どこで信じられなくなってしまったんだろう。どうしてケイチ君にナタを振りどうして私はこんなにも大好きな仲間たちにこんなにも恐ろしいことを。
お前、そうか。気づいたのか。この世界で
自分で自分こんなにもあんなにも楽しい日々だったのに、何の不満もなかったし何の不安もなかったのに、どうして自分で壊してしまうような真似を。
レナ、お前はやっぱりすげえよ。
After I killed you and Mion, I didn't realize I'd done anything wrong, so I left a note and called Oishi-san. I still believed that someone else was at fault. Until... even after I was dead. I didn't even notice I had sinned. How sad it was to kill my friends because of a little misunderstanding, even when they were trying to help me. And how painful it was not to realize it was a sin.
だから、レナはすごいんだよ。仲間を一人、お前は罪を犯すさすがだよ、レナ。さすがだよ。俺とは違うんだ。
Reina stood up slowly and lowered her hatchet.
仲間を傷つみーちゃんにひどい。
後で謝っと。俺的には当分の間、姉妹の入れ替わりを見抜けて、ちょうどいい傷跡だと思ってるぞ。
それに、
誰を殺した。
マミやリナと。
あ
の二人を殺すこっても、もう世界は狂い始めていったと思う。だということは、の二人を殺すのは。
That is an interesting question. Was it wrong to kill those two? Like, obviously, if you look at it from a strictly moral standpoint, you might say yes, but I don't think right or wrong is the question. I just think it was clearly something very traumatic, which affected, her mental stability. I don't really think the morality of it is the problem. I think it was just, she was clearly already under a lot of stress, not even just from the situation with her father and Rina, but just even going all the way back to, the divorce, her mental instability in Ibaraki, the way she harmed herself, everything that built up to that moment. That was just kind of a breaking point, regardless of what the morality of it was. I don't think that's necessarily what that's trying to prove. Clearly that was like a breaking point for her. I don't think the story is trying to necessarily say it was wrong or right.
正しいことじゃ。
正しいかどうかは知らんが、最善手じゃなかったことは確かだな。
Now see, you're not wrong there.
最善手って
そんなこともわからないのかよ。
I grabbed Reina's head and embraced her. Then I told her something so simple. It was so simple that anyone could think of it, but Reina didn't do it. I didn't do it either back then.
何かやばかったり、疑いそうになったり、辛いことがあったりした時はな。
It was so simple.
仲間に相談するんだよ。
そうだよね。そうだよね。
Reina cried in my arms for a while. She cried about the wrong choice she made at the very beginning. The choice couldn't have been hard to see. I'm sure it was something that was within her grasp. How stupid it was to worry about it by herself. She had friends. She had friends whom she trusted. Why did she think she couldn't talk to her friends about it?
私が間違ってどうして話さなかった。なんで私はみんなを信じてるのに。
俺もかつてそうだ。だから俺は笑わねえぞ。でも、しかもレナは俺なんかよりずっと早く気づけたじゃねえか。
We will trust each other. We will never doubt our friends. We will rely on each other. We will talk to each other and help each other. That's why friends are always happy. Why we can endure anything together.
じゃあレナ、幕の降りた舞台だけどさ、これで全部おしまいだぜ。まあまあ、俺最後だけ付き合ってくれよ。
We stood up together, holding hands. The moon was hanging behind us. When I nodded, Reina threw away her hatchet, disappeared into the darkness below. And I spoke to the audience in hell, the demons who weren't expecting this ending. I was proclaiming victory.
これで今宵は俺たちは惨劇にもう俺たちは互いを疑わない。だからいつまでも結束している。だからどんな惨劇が訪れようとも悲劇など知るか。悪魔どもが喜ぶ脚本が今後どれだけやってこようとも俺たちが全部ぶち壊してやるぜ。
Ooh. The incident at the Forest Service field office in Hinamizawa. I'm liking this music. Midday, June 25th, the 15th year of the Showa era. Location, Hinamizawa, Shishibona City, Shomei, inside the Forest Service field office. Summary. On June 25th, the suspect, Ryugu Reina, broke to the Forest Service field office in Hinamizawa. She forced her way into the classroom of the local school, housed within the office complex, and proceeded to take 25 people hostage. The suspects carried around a large quantity of gasoline and held the school hostage for over 7 hours. The situation remained in deadlock for some time, but at 6:45, several hostages resisted and fled from the building. At the same time, a special unit from Osaka Police Department's 2nd Riot Division arrived on the scene. 24 of the hostages were safely rescued. The remaining hostage fled to the roof, and after a brief pursuit, the suspect engaged him in close combat. At 7:10, she gave disarm and surrender, freeing the final hostage. Wow, they were only up there for like 10 minutes? That's crazy. Casualties, 4, all of minor injuries. Details follow. Sonozaki Mion, she was captured by the suspect around noon that day. She escaped at 6:45, was taken to safety. The suspect inflicted minor injuries on her during the fight. Hura Erika, she was captured by the suspect around noon that day. She escaped at 6:45, was taken to safety. The suspect inflicted minor injuries. Hojo Satoko, she was captured and she fell and suffered minor injuries during her escape. Maibara Keiichi, he was captured by the suspect around noon that day. He received minor injuries when he engaged in combat with the suspect. Regarding the arrest, Ryugu Reina, she disarmed and surrendered to the police at 7:10, was subsequently arrested, and she was taken to the Okonomiya police station and questioned. She admitted to the outline given above. There's been some dispute about the accountability of the suspect during the crime. After subjecting her to a psychiatric examination, the prosecution determined that the suspect is fully accountable for her actions. The defense is in direct opposition to this, and has submitted their own psychiatric examination report denying the suspect's accountability. The trial is currently in session. Okay. There's got to be a follow-up though, right? There's got to be like a post-credit scene, right? Very curious. And if not, then I'm curious how the next one starts. God, I'm just so curious. Fuck. Scenario jump mode, you can replay, Is there an all-cast review? Tips reading room, okay. The staff room, okay, we're gonna have another sit-down with Higurashi, huh? Ah, we have a tip right at the end. Okay, gotcha. I was gonna say, I haven't got my achievement for seeing all the tips yet. Okay, I see you, I see you. Interesting, very interesting. View those tips. Last page, the demon's script. The car began to rattle as the road turned from asphalt to gravel. The cry of the cicadas seeped through the tightly shut windows. Most people would open their car windows and let the natural air in along with the sound of the cicadas. People are also spoiled. He'd rather keep himself cool with the air conditioning, turn to Max, than listen to the sounds of nature. Usually it was the rainy season at this time of year, but this June the summer had already come without any rain, just like how the weather was on that day 20 years ago.
ここはやっぱり空気のいいところだよな。
Interesting.
ええ、風光明媚ないい土地です。ひょっとしたら隣の村みたいに世界文化遺産に指定されることもあったかもしれない。
そのおかげで観光客がいない。実に快適じゃないか。どうして旅行者ってのは田舎じゃ交通法規を忘れられるんだ？
赤坂先輩はアウトドア今も？
最近はさっぱりだな。何しろ。
それはお互い様です。おー、いたいた。あやな。
The other man noticed and waved his hand before anyone in the car could honk the horn. The man was a young fellow on a motorcycle with a big backpack on his shoulders. He looked like he was ready to go camping. Akasaka and his partner stepped out of the car and shook hands with the young man.
小隊長殿、ご無沙汰いたしており。
おう、今のとこはどうだ？元気にやってるか？今日は楽にしてくれていいぞ。こちらは俺が大学時代に大変お世話になった。
どうも、赤坂です。今日はもう一人、大石という者とご一緒するお約束でしたが、直前に検査入院が入ってし。
よろしくお願いします。
さて、赤坂先輩、どこから回りますか？
His name was Mamoru Akasaka. He was a veteran detective from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. Despite the fact that he was close to his retirement, he hadn't lost his clear instinct and sharp eyes at all. Those eyes showed the confidence that he'd built through many risky experiences, and he had a well-built muscular body and a fearless aura. He must have fought against many violent criminals. His connection to Inamizawa went back almost 30 years, all the way to 1978. He was in the Public Safety Division in the Metropolitan Police Department. He came to Inamizawa to investigate the kidnapping case of the grandson of Inukai, the then Minister of Construction. There he met Oishi and Rika Furude. Rika Furude predicted her own death. Akasaka regretted for the rest of his life that he couldn't save that little girl from her fate. He saw the news of the great Hinamizawa disaster on TV and met up again with Oishi. They pledged to uncover the mystery of both the cruel fate that fell upon the little girl and the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa. Unfortunately, Hinamizawa was sealed off for a long time. As a result, all Akasaka and Oishi could do for the past 20 years was publish the little information they gathered, and ask for their readers to send their tips and clues. But recently, the seal on Hinamizawa had finally been lifted. However, they couldn't come to Hinamizawa until today due to Akasaka's busy work schedule and Oishi's poor health. In fact, Oishi was supposed to come with Akasaka, but he was called in for an emergency health checkup. The other two came along were Akasaka's juniors from university. One worked at the ground SDF, and the other was his subordinate. They were assigned to the mission of sealing off Hinamizawa, so they were quite knowledgeable about the village. Akasaka took out a scrapbook from his bag. The corners of the scrapbook were all dented, making it look very old. Akasaka flipped through the pages, thought for a second, let them know his first destination.
では、鬼ヶ淵沼をお願いし。
了解いたしました。それではご案内いたします。
The young man got on his bike and waited for the others to get back to their car. They honked at each other to signal that they were ready, and the young man led the car to the swamp. Heading through the forest, they came to an open area where the ground was covered by concrete. There wasn't even a single drop of water in sight. All the water of the swamp had been replaced by concrete. That's what Onagabuchi Swamp looked like now.
大災害後のだいぶ初期に埋め立てられたと聞いています。自分がここへ着任した時は
ちょっと降りてみよ
う。Akasaka got out of the car and walked to the center of the concrete-filled swamp. It wasn't a parking lot or a heliport. It was just a huge, empty concrete space right in the middle of the forest.
なるほど。これがネットでよく言う UFO の着陸。
そんなことを言われてるんです。
ここの写真がよくミステリー系のサイトに紹介されてるよ。ここで政府と宇宙人が交流してたって言うんだ。確かにこんな森の中にポカンとこんなコンクリートの空き地があれば不審に思うよな。
Volcanic gas erupted from the swamp in June 1983. The deadly mixture of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide engulfed and destroyed Hinamizawa in a single night. The village was sealed off and the SDF covered the swamp with concrete.
ネットで騒いでる連中にも連中なりの根拠があるらしい。地質学的に言ってガスの発生源を塞ぐために沼をコンクリートで固めるなんてのは。
なるほど。確かに活火山の火口をコンクリートで埋めたという話は聞かないですね。でもまあ税金での無駄な工事は我が国の伝統ですから。
Lately, people who love things like supernatural phenomenon, UFOs, write on the internet about the great Hinamizawa disaster. It's well known by now that the cause of the disaster was an eruption of deadly volcanic gas from a magma chamber. In 1986, a similar natural disaster occurred at Lake Nyos in Cameroon, Africa, so people easily believe that such a rare natural disaster could occur anywhere on Earth, and that was what had happened in Hinamizawa as well. However, a rumor about another possible explanation began to fly around on the internet recently. They say the disaster was a cover-up by the government, and that it was actually a biochemical terrorist attack by aliens. Why had such a rumor begun to spread now? They claimed to back up their theory with a secret document known as File Number 34. Someone online named it File Number 34 for descriptive purposes, but the name spread and stuck since then because it sounded like a government conspiracy. People loved it. It's unknown how or from where they obtained those documents, but they posted scans and pictures which were all ridiculous. Okay, so whichever scrapbook that Reina had somehow made it to the public. Plus, more fake evidence was produced over time, so now even the existence of such documents are in doubt. File number 34 deserves a bit more explanation. However, since it started on the internet, truths and lies were all mixed together and has become more like an urban legend. So this is what is believed to be mostly true. File number 34 was a notebook written by a nurse named Mio Takano who worked at a local clinic in Inamizawa. File number 34 was most likely named after her. What? 34? Are there alternate words for 3 and 4 that spell out her name or something? This woman was a researcher who studied the demon myth of Inamizawa and tried to solve what it meant. Actually, maybe. I know that Mi can be 3. Typically it's San, but I know it can be 3 simply because I know they use 39 to spell out Miku. I know that 4 can be Yon, which, yo, you kind of onto something there. The contents of this notebook state that she prophesied the Great Hinamizawa disaster of 1983. According to her research, UFO crash landed in Hinamizawa a long time ago and sunk into Onagabuchi Swamp. The UFO carried parasitic bacteria from space and began to infect the locals. The infected villagers began to behave extremely violently, so much so that they were fit for the word demon. Mio Takano insisted that this was the explanation for the myth about demons pouring out of the swamp. An alien who survived the crash realized that the Earthlings had gone crazy because of the bacteria he brought in, and he decided to show himself to the villagers to help them out. This is how Oyashiro-sama was born. The alien was able to cure the villagers with highly advanced technology, but couldn't eradicate the bacteria completely. Since the villagers looked up to the alien as some sort of deity, the alien utilized its status to hand down specific rules to the villagers in order to stabilize the disease. The bacteria took a liking to Hinamizawa's habitat, so when a carrier of the disease left Hinamizawa, their symptoms would re-emerge. Therefore, the alien made it a rule not to leave the village. This leads to the legend of the transcendence of Onagabuchi. The weird practices and miracles that the villagers performed were realized by means of the advanced technology that they received from the alien.
そういうののマニアな人たちはつくづくそういうのが好きですよ。ノストラダムスの大予言だって99年にはあんなに騒いだのに 7月が過ぎたら何事もなかったかのようにみんな過ごしてる。民放もあれだけ煽っておいて無責任たらありゃしない。
でも高野美代はひなみ沢大災害を予見したらしい。それは嘘じゃない。確かにこのスクラップ帳に書いてある。
そんなまさか赤坂先輩、それ本当に？
As time passed, the bacteria stabilized in human bodies and became harmless. The alien and the bacteria began to fade away from people's minds. However, the alien has lived on for hundreds of years with the protection of the three families. It still lives on as the spirit of a deity in the secret temple of the Hurure Shrine. The alien manipulated the bacteria living inside the villagers and maintained control over them for hundreds of years. The alien wanted to regain its power and started researching how to bring back the lost powers of the bacteria, etc., etc. Things get much stranger from there. People say that the disaster was actually part of the alien's plan to conquer the entire Earth by spreading the reawakened bacteria. The Japanese government has a secret division that fights against alien invasions, and they trained at Area 51 in the US, etc., etc. And they moved in to stop the invasion by sealing off the entire village, and they killed all the residents by using toxic gas.
映画でそんなのありましたね。なんて言ったっけな。
Yeah, that movie about aliens with the one black guy, the MI, what could that last letter be? I'm pretty sure the MI stands for like men in something, but God, what could the men be in? God, there's so many options.
この辺まで来ると俺もそろそろめちゃくちゃだなとは思う。ただこのめちゃくちゃを書いた高野美代は昭和58年の6月中旬、そしてその死の直前に自らの死を悟ったかのように村の一人の少女にこのスクラップ帳を預けて意志を託したというんだ。
That girl is known as Girl A. Some guy who investigated the case was able to track it down to a girl named Reina Ryugu. So now it's known as the Reina Ryugu theory on the internet. Oh, poor Reina. You didn't deserve that. To have the wacko conspiracy be named after you. Come on. Reina Ryugu inherited Mio Takano's will by means of the scrapbooks. She tried to fight against the planned invasion by holding a school hostage to make the local police uncover the alien's plot. Of course, no one believed her and they assumed she was in a state of paranoia. Back then, people assumed that Reina Ryugu took Mio Takano's delusion seriously and was motivated to commit a poorly executed crime. When she held the school hostage, Reina Ryugu told the local police that the alien was controlling the three families and was plotting bioterrorism on a massive scale. And the very next day, the Great Hinamizawa disaster occurred.
まさか、そりゃ偶然じゃないんですか？
わからない。偶然ではないと思う連中に言わせると、その後の自衛隊による封鎖は、例えばこの沼の埋め立てが一例だ。そして埋め立てる前に明らかに通常の地質調査とは異なる否定派はそれを単にガスの発生地なので危険に備えて立ち入りを制限していただけだと。
それは多分否定派の言うのが正しいんじゃないかと思います。
他にも異常に長かった封鎖期間も疑惑の目が向けられている。近年に起こった離島の火山ガス災害の例を見てもわかるように、ひなみ沢のケースは例外中の例外のケースのはずなのに、
あのケースは島民が祈祷を強く希望したからと聞いています。ひなみ沢には帰る人がそもそもいないんだから、十分安全が確認できるまでたっぷり期間を置いただけなのでは？
ひなみ沢を封鎖していた自衛隊員たちは定期的に血を抜かれての厳密な検査を受けていたと。それは実は細菌感染の陽性反応を見るもので、
それはやはりガスが湧き出す危険性があっただけに健康管理には気を使ったということでしょう。
まあ君の言うことももっともだと思う。あともっと面白い話もあるぞ。ひなみ沢大災害時に火山ガスは発生していないと主張する連中がいる。
And see, like, that's interesting. Because with episode 2 and obviously episode 5 consequently, and honestly with episode 1, though I don't think episode 1 got that far. Got to like the date that disaster usually happens, right? But at least with episode 2 and 5, like, Keiichi does survive several months into the future And like there's no mention of any kind of disaster or anything like that. That's never really touched upon. Which is something that stands out, right? With chapter 1, you could kind of give the excuse of like, the day never got that far, right? They never got that far into the timeline. Because what is it, like June 25th? 26th? 25th or 26th, somewhere around there, is when the disaster happens, right? But I don't think chapter 1 ever got to that point. But clearly, at least in the case of chapter 2, there is a time skip where like Keiichi's in the hospital after Shion stabs him, right? And even, Shion coming back to stab him was like at least several days afterwards, I'm pretty sure. If not longer. I almost want to say it was a couple weeks afterwards, but like for sure it was definitely a few days. So clearly in that instance, the disaster doesn't happen. Now, I don't know what conclusions to draw from that, other than that Shion potentially killed someone who has some connection to whatever is behind the disaster, right? If we follow Akasaka's theory here, where there was actually no gas ever emitted, right? They sealed the swamp so that no one did any research to see if gas could actually come out of there, right? It wasn't to try to prevent the flow of gas, it was because they didn't want people actually doing any research to see if there was gas under there. That way they could just write it off as like, oh, it was gas. It was all gas. I see where he's going here. But somehow that's avoided in chapter 2. Somehow Shion's actions in chapter 2 and 5 somehow prevent it. Somehow she does something to undermine it, which is very interesting. Because if we think about what Shion did, she kills Oreo, she kills... she gets into a conflict with Rika. Rika ends up killing herself. She kills Satoko, she kills Mion. Right, those are like the 4 big ones, and then she like stabs Keiichi, but she never actually kills him. Those are like the big 4, right? And Kimiyoshi. Alright, Kimiyoshi, the fucking... Right, that was the first one. But Oreo, Kimiyoshi, Rika, Satoko, and Mion. Those are the big 5. And somehow in doing that, one, maybe multiple, because we know Oreo and Kimiyoshi are both like... Well, let's think. Oreo, Kimiyoshi, and Rika, right? That was the whole reason Shion went for those 3. Was because they were like the big heads of the families, right? But clearly something Shion did avoided it. So clearly someone there, someone is implicated in it. Because from what we can tell, from chapters 2 and 5, is that somehow that disaster doesn't happen. Somehow she avoids it. And that's the thing. Chapter 2, we had no reason to suspect that there would be anything that would happen, right? Because the first instance of the disaster doesn't happen until chapter 3. So you don't suspect anything in chapter 2. And then after chapter 5 ends... Was there a post-credit scene? I don't think so, right? They just kind of show the police report of Shion falling to her death, right? I think that's how it ends. But then, like, there's no real... It never addresses the disaster, right? It's just something that's never addressed. Which is so very curious. So very interesting.
火山ガスは発生していない？どういう意味ですか？
つまり、もともと火山ガスなんか噴出してなくて、ガス災害というのが政府の嘘であると主張しているらしい。ほら、洋画の人類と UFO がコンタクトする作品でも同じ設定だったじゃないか。
それこそミステリーマニアのこじつけだと思いますね。
Just like in the movies.
で、その連中は何を根拠に火山ガスが発生しなかったと言っているんです？
封鎖解除後、ミステリーマニアがどっと押し寄せて、で、政府発表の火山ガス成分によるならば、硫化水素によって金属が腐食されたり、自然体系に大きなダメージが残るにもかかわらず、南沢にはそういう痕跡が残っておらず、よって火山ガスが噴出したとは到底思えないとかなんとか言ってる。もっともあれから20年も放置された村なんだ。そんな痕跡を発見できたかどうかは疑わしいな。
やはりつくづくインターネットというのは信用できませんね。で、まさか赤坂先輩はその怪しげな話を信じてるわけですか？
No, he's just a good detective.
最初は信じなかったが、最近は俺もわからない。
赤坂先輩ともあろうお方が。
このスクラップ帳、これが本物の34号。昭和58年6月25日に南沢営林署に人質を取って籠城し、南沢大災害の混乱で長いこと行方不明だったが、近年大石さんの古い友人が県警の保存庫で発見したらしい。
Back then, Oishi thought Reina Ryugu was delusional. But after reading this again after the Great Hinamiza disaster, some of the contents seem to hold vital clues. It's not the alien part that he was interested in, but her theory that an endemic disease of parasitic microbes in Yamazawa was responsible for the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Of course, there's no proof that such microbes exist, so it still remains at a theoretical level.
大石さんの仮説なんだが、御三家が過去の信仰心を村に取り戻すために、大昔の毒性の強い病原体を研究していたのは本当じゃないかって言うんだ。南沢大災害は実はその結果の失敗じゃないかってな。
Interesting. It's an experiment that went wrong. I don't know what to think about that. Because that's one thing I'm going to keep in my mind is the fact that Chapter 2 and subsequently Chapter 5, that's the thing, if Chapter 5 had addressed the disaster, then, like, I'd be like, okay, it did happen, we just didn't see it happen, and Chapter 2 wasn't a, plot point at that point in time. But Chapter 5 doesn't address it either. So I have to look at Shion's actions and think about what about them could have happened to prevent it. This theory is also based on the theories and myths we found on the internet. The village clinic's chief doctor died mysteriously right before the Great Hinamizawa disaster. A girl, Rika Puride, was brutally murdered on the night Reina Ryugu took the school hostage. There could have been an underground research lab beneath the village clinic. Dr. Ide could have been forced to do microbiological research, but he couldn't live with his own sins and committed suicide. Rika Puride could have been brutally murdered in a sacrifice for some sort of ritual ceremony in the name of Yashiro-sama's revival. However, their experiment went wrong. Instead of the microbes being parasitic in the villagers, they became a killer virus. And they exterminated the entire village in one night.
ただのガス災害じゃないことは明白なんだ。ガスが湧く直前に一人の少女が最近テロを予告し、それをスクラップ帳にまとめた高野美代本人も含めてね。あれを偶然の 予見不可能な災害だとするにはどうも腑に落ちない要素が少なくない。この34号文章を読めば、
じゃあひなみ沢大災害は自然災害ではなく細菌テロ。
In the modern era, everyone in Japan knows about the shocking incident where a doomsday cult created a nerve gas, sarin, and unleashed it for the purposes of mass murder. But in the 80s, the idea of a single cult being able to carry out such an act of terrorism didn't even cross our minds.
その後の自衛隊の長い封鎖はその殺人ウイルスを調査するためではない。
UFO に乗った宇宙人がって話よりはカルト集団がって方が近年は信憑性がありますからね。
本当に UFO が墜落した可能性もあるかもしれないな。リュウグウレイナが人質籠城時に出した要求の筆頭。
バカバカしい。
それがバカバカしいか調べたくても見ろ。沼はコンクリートで数メートルの厚さで固められ確かめる術もない。地質学的にはガスを防ぐ効果は何も期待できないはずの。
Yeah, no, the swamp was clearly covered up for a reason. I don't believe the aliens and UFOs aspect of it. I think they're trying to do like that similar thing like they did kind of with Umineko, right? Where they present the story in like a very supernatural fashion, but in the actual answer to the mystery is something genuinely grounded in reality.
赤坂先輩がそれを立証するにはあとはここの住民の生き残りを見つけて。
それも致命的だ。ひなみ沢大災害後のひなみ沢出身者に対する魔女狩りのせいで今や出身者の存在は不明だ。彼らは名乗りなどあげまい。
Right after the disaster, some people who were from Hinamizawa started displaying erratic behavior. When they started dying mysteriously and committing suicide in strange ways, people got scared of them and chased them out of their neighborhoods. The government was practically useless in protecting their privacy at the time, so the former residents of Hinamizawa lied about where they were from and have kept it that way since.
じゃあお手上げじゃないですか。
それでも諦めないのが刑事魂ってもんだよ。あれが自然災害じゃなかったっていう状況証拠はいくらでもあるんだ。何か一つの具体的証拠が見つかれば芋づる式に全てを白日のもとにさらせるかもしれない。
So like I start to think, right? I remember Mion mentioning that the Sonozakis were looking to try to bring in more people. They were trying to open the area up to be developed more, to bring in more people. The Sonozakis themselves did not, the actual main family did not want to keep the village isolated, right? She said that as when Keiichi came to her talking about all the stuff Reina had said and whatnot. Like, no, we want, we're trying to keep this on the down low, but we want to like open it up for more people to come in. That's why you're here. You were one of the first people we brought in to be like, yeah, we opened it up, come in, you know? So it makes me start to think like, I do agree it wasn't a natural disaster, but what if it was accidental? What if they were doing something to the swamp that caused it to happen? That doesn't explain away Rika's death, obviously. That's clearly something a bit more mired in mystery. And that's something that not even Shion's story can explain away, because Shion also kills Rika. Or at least Shion's story leads to the death of Rika anyway. Very interesting. But those two could be two separate incidents, right? Rika's death could be totally separated, could be totally separate from whatever happened that caused this, right? So like maybe they tampered with the swamp in some way that caused something to happen, right? And then, therefore, Shion killing off, Old Man Kimiyoshi and Oryo, essentially the heads of, like, everything that was the heads that were trying to, like, who kept things moving, who had all the plans in motion and whatnot. Clearly, there would have been a lot of confusion within the families and whatnot. No one knew really what was going on. When the truth comes to light, obviously there'd be like restructuring within the families, trying to figure out, how things would proceed moving forward and so on. So whatever plans they had in motion probably would have been postponed or halted, right, while all that was being taken care of. And thus, maybe there is like a good chunk of time. Maybe the disaster does still happen, but at a later point in time, because of all the confusion from the deaths that Shion causes.
まあ、あれから20年経過してますからね。真相はあまりに遠い闇の中かもしれません。
Deep in the darkness, you say. Is that a hint?
そうだな。21世紀の今頃になってここを訪れても
What happened
何も分かりはしないんだ
Hinamizawa in June 1983? The only factual evidence that I had was that Mio Takano mysteriously died and left her scrapbook predicting a bioterrorist attack. That is also something to consider, right? Like, you still have to consider Takano and Tomitake, like, what happened to them? Obviously, we can continue to think that everything is isolated incidents, right? Not necessarily connected. But even still, even if it is an isolated incident, what happened there? A young girl took a school hostage to make people listen to this prediction, and no one took it seriously. The chief doctor of the village clinic committed suicide. People believed that a little girl, Rika Furide, was a reincarnation of a Yashiro-sama, and she was brutally murdered. What was the truth behind this scrapbook? Was it written to reveal a huge conspiracy? Or was it just a bunch of delusions written by an occult maniac? If the contents of the scrapbook were true, the disaster could have been avoided if we had heeded the warnings of one girl. If they weren't true, then who created the disaster to follow the scenario of the scrapbook? After the sarin nerve gas incident, the words mind control came into spotlight. In contrast to brainwashing, which can easily force a person to commit certain acts in the short term, mind control takes a long time to gradually make a person believe that what he or she must do is the right thing to do, and to act upon it as if it were his or her own idea. It's a form of character alteration which is far more serious than brainwashing. Okay. So are we insinuating then that's kind of like what Takano had been up to? Right? Had she mind controlled Tomitake into assisting her to whatever? Right? I guess she kind of like, in a way, she kind of did with Reina, right? Because she like really, cozied up to her, acted like her friend. Told her scrapbooks were very important, told her you'd be the only person who would understand them. She really, Reina, who was in a very desperate point in her life, she really seemed like she was the only person. She took Reina very seriously whenever Reina told her story. She didn't laugh at her. Kind of. But that's the thing, is like, Takano she doesn't share her theories with Keiichi, but she usually she always explains the dark history behind Onagahuchi and Hinamizawa and all that. I'm not sure. The cult behind the sarin gas incident induced fear and anxiety into its members through its revelations of doomsday. At the same time, they ordered them to do certain things as a means of salvation, and had them do so voluntarily. Right. The formula was quite similar to how Reina Ryugu became a puppet of file number 34. So does that mean that Reina Ryugu was mind-controlled by someone? I mean, mayhaps. Does that mean that the cult that mind-controlled her tried to cause the end of the world in order to increase the credibility of their teachings, just like the other cult did? Would that make file number 34 some sort of religious textbook for them? When I lose my grip on what's true and what's not, it sometimes makes me feel that someone might be laughing in amusement at this disaster. This scrapbook was like a script. It was a script for a tragedy that takes the lives of thousands of villagers in one night. It was a script for demons who laughed at that loss of human life. Someone wrote the script. Someone performed it. Someone watched the show and laughed. Damn it. What the hell happened in Hinamizawa in June 1983? Well, fuck, that is the question, my guy. Okay, so they're kind of presenting the scrapbooks in a similar fashion to like how I hate to constantly be bringing it back, but because it's the other work that I've read, you know, how like in Umineko, like some of the episodes in and of themselves, they had little nuggets of truth in them, right? But some of them were based totally on complete theories that like or complete fabrications that had no basis in truth, just because people picked up on like rumors and whatnot, and you know, these were stories that they created that weren't actually based in, you know, truth to come out of it. Interesting. Very interesting. I'm very excited to see what the next two chapters have in store. I really am. Because clearly they're trying to like, okay, the main focus here is not necessarily the string of mysterious deaths, right? That's something that has happened, but it may not necessarily be the focus. The focus you should focus on is like Takano, her situation, and this disaster, right? And the disaster part is very interesting. Like I said, because of what chapter 2 and 5 put forward, the disaster aspect of it is something very interesting to consider. And think about how the people Shion eliminated may have an impact as to what could have brought about the disaster. But anyway, it seems Rikshi would like to have another chat with us. Hello, my name is Rikshi07. Hello. I hope you enjoyed playing Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 6, Tsumihoroboshi. I enjoyed it very much, actually. Like I said, thus far, it's got to be my favorite chapter. There are several themes I wanted to write in this chapter, but I'd like to talk about one of them here. It's about the denial of murder. This is something I had to write sooner or later, since this is a novel about serial murders. There are two means that youngsters in particular use these days to solve problems, which are murder and suicide. When we feel stress, we choose to either get rid of the source of the stress or to get away from it. Let's say you're bullied by a kid at school. You have two ways to solve the problem. You choose either to get rid of the kid from your current environment, or to get away from the environment itself. Usually, bullies are stronger and have their underlings, so you don't stand a chance alone to get rid of them. It's also not easy to switch classes or to quit school, so you can't easily get away from the situation. As a result, the situation gets worse day by day, and your stress urges you to solve the problem immediately. And you come up with murder or suicide as easy solutions. If suicide is considered defeat, you'd want to consider murder. I feel like there are many people who think that way. However, if you actually committed a murder, it wouldn't be easy to pay for the sin. I believe murderers know that well too. But you really hate the bully who pushed you to the limit where you have no choice but to kill him. So with a determination that turns your entire life upside down, you commit murder. But if you have such strong determination, there have to be more ways to take that than opting for murder, which should be the last resort. You can talk to your friends. If that doesn't work, you can talk to your family. If that doesn't work, you can talk to your teacher. That is true. That is something like you can look back on now and see like that's kind of been like the one major difference in this story, right? Is like the friends actually open up to each other and talk to each other. That's something you truly don't really see in the previous chapters. I guess you kind of see it. Well, no, not even in chapter 3, because that's more so everyone else talking about Satoko's situation and never Satoko herself coming forward about it, right? Never really opening up to her friends about it. But yeah, that is a common connector, is that no one talks to anyone. People feel isolated and they, choose to do things on their own, feel like they have to be the one to be the change, right? No one talks to others and tries to get outside opinions and tries to, turn to others for help. If that doesn't work, then what? There have to be more ways. If you have the determination to give up on your life by committing murder, there have to be more ways. Our modern era is better than any era before it. There are many hotlines that you can call to talk to someone. Even if you don't have any friends or family, there are many places you can go for help. The people who will answer the phone aren't amateurs. They're volunteers, but they're also veterans who have worked as social workers or juvenile counselors for a long time. I can assure you that they have more social experience and passion than your parents do. People who work to help people for free can't be bad people. If you feel like you have no choice but to kill the bully or commit suicide, please try to call these hotlines. People who think it's useless to talk to others usually haven't really talked to anyone. True. True. Have the courage to call. There will be somebody you can completely rely on at the other end of the line. Don't keep it to yourself. Talk to somebody. Yeah, no, that's something I can, like, personally attest to. I was very grateful, very lucky, I should say, to have someone in my family who, you know, they didn't really force me to talk, I shouldn't say, but they, like, noticed I was in a bad place and allowed me to open up to them, right? They didn't force me to talk, but they, like, sat down with me and they asked questions and whatnot, which eventually developed into a conversation where I could be honest with them, right? It's why I say, like, I'm very much agreeing with Ryukishi here, is like, talking to someone helps. I can acknowledge from my own situation, like, it's very difficult to take that first step to talk to someone. You know, you never know quite. I guess it's almost kind of similar in, like, Reina's situation. Like, you don't know for sure if you can trust them, right? You don't know for sure if you can take that leap. You start to think about all the negative what ifs if you actually open up to someone. But, like, it helps. It genuinely helps just to talk to someone. To take that first step. And like even Ryukishi here mentions, like, if you truly feel you don't have those people, the hotlines exist. And, like, I'll acknowledge the hotlines aren't even perfect, right? There's definitely, you know, been issues reported with the hotlines and whatnot, but, like, there's always something, right? It's always worth it to take that chance. Just to get it out there. Talking helps. It genuinely does. Irikshio7 wrote such a long story just to tell you this. Must be a very poor writer. So Irikshio7 wants to talk to you all rather than worrying all by himself. How can I write even more entertaining stories? 7th expansion, Irikshio7. Okay. Nice little way to cap it off. I see you. Alright. So I guess the answer arcs then are going to have these staff room episodes rather than the all-cast review. Unless Chapter 8. Chapter 8 being the final chapter, that'd be a good time for the all-cast review, right? Have one final send-off with the whole crew. That'd be kind of nice, just saying. Not that I don't enjoy these little chats with you, Rikshi, but just saying, Chapter 8, that'd be a nice little way to send it all off. But no, very good chapter. Fucking A. Very good chapter. Goddamn. Like I said, I would call this one my favorite thus far. I was a big fan of Chapter 3. Chapter 5 was very interesting, very good as well. The way it told everything from a different perspective, I really liked it. But fuck, this chapter was so fucking good from just start to finish. Like, even, like with just the water gun fight that they, harken back to here at the end, that in and of itself was very exciting to watch, very interesting to see, and try to theorize how it would come around in the end, right? Like, you kind of knew that at some point there would be, like, a 1v1 with Keiichi and Reina, right? And maybe you could even hypothesize that it would come towards the end of the story, right? But, like, I don't think I could have ever predicted that it would end up where it was. Like, maybe you could predict the final, like, clash, right? Metal Bat versus Hatchet. Maybe you could predict that. But to predict how it gets to that point, even the setting of where that takes place, and even how it ends, was just so fucking well done. So fucking well done. And honestly, like, you know, Keiichi's little declaration there at, like, the demons who write the script, right? I even like that a bit more than, like, kind of how, like, you know, Battler declared his war on the witches in Umineko, right? Like, Keiichi's little declaration of war of, like, well, we will fucking avoid your tragedy. We will fight against your tragedy. We will have our fucking positive days back. Like, I like that. I really did. Like, even that was just such a nice touch in this story. Fuck, chapter 6 is so damn good, dude. Like I said, very excited for 7 and 8. Very excited for 7 and 8. Like, not even necessarily looking forward to see if they can top this. Even if they don't top this one, in my personal opinion, in my personal preferences, like, I'm very excited to see where they go. I'm very excited to see what gets presented. I'm so excited for it all. I really am. And honestly, I have a not to get too excited, but I have a lot of recording time this week, so I'm very excited because like I know I at least got 2 more days in the next 2 days, like as long as I don't act stupid and sleep in, but got the next 2 days, maybe even a couple days after that. Like, I got some recording time this week. So I'm very excited, very, very excited to jump into what's next. Fuck. But yeah, I'm going to end this one here for today. God damn, such a good chapter. And hopefully I will see y'all in the next one. Till then, peace.